Remember how I said in my last ranking video that I already had a bit of an idea as to what I was going to be doing next? Well, what I meant to say was I'm already scripting Powerpuff Girls ranked as we speak. And here we are, talking about a series that has now been around for close to 30 years now, and is somehow still living through an ill-conceived reboot and a cancelled CW show that the internet clowned on for literal years. But how does the original 6 seasons of the movie and 2 specials stack up these days? Here's where we find out, because we're covering everything from the original series that aired from 98 to 05. All 135 segments, the 2 specials, and the movie are being covered. Same rules as last time apply, however, only covering what was aired in the original lineup and not covering anything after the 10th anniversary special. So no, Dance Pants doesn't count, as Craig nor Lauren didn't have any involvement in it. Each season will have its own individual ranking, and then we ended off with a huge ranking at the end, with the movie, Christmas special, and the 10th anniversary special being their own separate entities. And finally, this is once again my personal opinion and not a definitive list. I will, however, say that this one may have opinions that were made directly in response to another Powerpuff Girls ranking video that's out there. But trust me when I say that this is not going to be petty, and unless there's a truly awful episode, bear in mind that I think each season of this show is just as good as the last. Also, just really quick before we get started on this, there's one thing I forgot to mention. Because of the fact that we're running through 135 episodes, 2 specials, and a movie, and a bunch of these are going to be at least 12 minutes long at the very latest, don't be surprised if I don't really have a lot to say for some of these episodes, and it's very snap fast between episode to episode, because, well, unless we get to like a feature length or a double length episode in case of some of the specials, it's gonna be very hard for me to say, this thing happened in this thing, because as you're about to find out, these episodes run very quickly, very fast, and some of the pacing for 12-minute episodes at the time, well, they're very much what you would expect for the time. But with all that out of the way, here's everything of the Powerpuff Girls ranked. Let's go. The starting point is a nice intro to our constants for the series. The girls, Mojo, the city of Townsville, the mayor. It's a nice way to kick it all off, honestly. The plot, however, involving Mojo stealing these Egyptian jewels to be able to make a beam that transforms the citizens of Townsville and potentially the world as well into dogs is quite interesting as well. The Powerpuff signal, as opposed to the rotary phone, is an odd sight as much as it is a show of what the kids call early installment weirdness, according to TV tropes. Not gonna get used to it given how rarely it shows up after this, however. Now, the dog transformation storyline is an interesting way to show how bonkers this series will be. Also, Doggy Professor is cute as heck, and Bubbles being obsessed over the puppies is pretty cuter. And the way they ended off with beating him is simple, yet very, very amazing, given the fact that he'd have won had Buttercup just not gone further behind. Nice little start to this series, and not much else I can really say. This is pretty much the baseline. Utonium shown getting depressed and worn down as a single dad in the first set of episodes is a wild thing to show in only the second segment, as well as his first falling in love plotline. I expect we're going to be seeing that a lot. Miss Goodlady is such an original name, am I right? But Sedusa is such an amazing villain in this, given that she basically acts like a strict mod type as her main method of getting to them, and also namesaking the prof. Also, making Bubbles cry is a crime in of itself. The narrator being his own character in this, and most likely going forward, is something I always love looking back at this, and the way that they managed to beat her down just by exposing her the same way that she did earlier, that is a really good sight as well. It's a nice little bit of foreshadowing, I guess. I guess that's what you'd call that? I don't know. Anyway, Utonium's first vocal episode development is nice, a good bit of balance. Gonna put it above Monkey See, Doggy Do. Casual property damage over a cockroach. That's a pretty reasonable response, honestly. So yeah, this one is about cockroaches. This is gonna get a little bit interesting real quick if you ask me. But Utonium's speech on cockroaches is insane, and I love it, and I hope this continues. But he's also right to be nice to it, I guess. The narrator being self-aware in this episode is pretty funny, and I'm glad that it's kept up in these early episodes. And the introduction of the mayor's phone alongside Pokeyogs is a pretty important set piece moving forward on these early episodes as well. However, the one thing that is really dragging this one down is the fact that this is giving me wartime flashbacks to the movie Joe's Apartment, and I hate that movie so much, and I hate this episode especially because, I mean, just look at what you're seeing right now. Also, where does Blossom find a massive jar anyway? And also, a massive roach as Roach Coach's final form is kind of neat. Still icky though. The whole yucky on the inside bit is nice, however, as well as the reveal of a roach piloting a robot, which is Roach Coach. It's wild. However, this is still not an episode I'm going to revisit though. It's currently going at the bottom of the list if you ask me. This one's the Powerpuff Imposters episode, and the way they managed to keep capturing the crooks at the beginning is a funny little bit, and finding out the mayor's wife isn't Miss Bellum early on feels like a bit of a Mandela effect to me personally, cause I kind of always thought they had that vibe going on, but that also makes later episodes a little bit interesting. Speaking of the crooks, however, one of them is 100% a neg with his internal monologue, but the fact they keep using the Powerpuff Girls like this is as suits to do crime is actually kind of funny. Like, Amy confusing Shadow of being Sonic levels of funny. The mayor being a dumbass never ceases to amaze me, however, plus the Pokeyogs kids being swatted is wild because holy shit, think of the kind of trauma these kids must be having as the series goes on. This whole episode could be a bit more problematic now, but for the time, it's a nice little romp. Kaiju in the first minute. Excuse me, kaiju? Where are they even coming from? Anyway, this is the debut episode of him as a villain, so that's a hell yes in my opinion, and them causing a sibling rivalry that admittedly was also very much happening before they came around as the big conflict, and it being worsened by possessing Bubbles' plushie is diabolical stuff. Really plays into the more devilish persona they have, even making the narrators spooked out. The episode in general, however, especially the conflict, reminds me of Divide and Conquer from Teen Titans, except them coming together to save Bubbles at the end is a nice little bit. Them all joking about the leadership role at the end is very cute though. Not much else to really say except expect him episodes to be featured high up on my personal rankings because I love them, and this being a nice debut for them is great as well. Also, shout out for giving Bubbles more screen time. She really deserves it. Amoeba Boy's debut. The fact they're seemed as hardcore 30s gangsters when they're just the least threatening thing is kind of funny, especially given how they wish to be taken seriously, but they just really want to be seen. However, I'm not super into them as villains, honestly, even as a comedy relief bit, and the pacing of this episode of them just being seen as a joke the entire time makes this a bit hard to watch. But them causing people to get sick extremely quick is a bit too real, but the way they brush it all off by not being a real issue is kind of funny when the amoebas accidentally make the town sick. All they want to do is be good criminals, and yet they're still, by the end of the episode, a bit pathetic. Not even the girls really taking them seriously even after everything. You gotta love a good comedy relief villain like that, but the episode was a teeny bit meh though for my taste. This one, however, is a really good debut, as it's the Gangrene debut episode. Doubles as a Buttercup-focused episode as well. Personally speaking, however, next to Mojo, him, the Rowdy Ruffs, and Princess Morbox, the Gangrene Gang has to be my favorite antagonist of the show. Them being petty for the first 3 minutes, shenanigans with Ace happen, and it making Buttercup all fluttery-eyed is such a funny vibe, honestly. Ace and Buttercup being paired up like this reminds me a lot of the Nelson and Lisa dynamic from The Simpsons with the weird 2 different worlds feeling it evokes, especially with her seeking out in order to see him at the goddamn dump. The face she makes the entire time of this episode, especially when she's around Ace, is just, yep, this is her first time feeling in love with someone, and it just do be like that. Unfortunately, being gaslit by Ace of all people is a bad first time for sure. This episode really shows how different Buttercup is compared to the other two, as she could totally be a baddie if she were literally made to be triplets by the professor, which however shows her loyalty by the end in beating up Ace and the gang when she realizes what's going on here. Really good episode, especially for some development with Buttercup, and it's good to see they're taking it nicely. Spoiler alert for future ranking episodes, I'm not a fan of Fuzzy Lumpkins, especially any episodes that he's in, and especially in this debut. Spending half the runtime of Fuzzy going, "Get off or stop touching my property," does not a good episode make. His meltdown isn't that good either. Buttercup attacks Bubbles with Octi, and I hate it. I don't think I mentioned it in the debut episode, but apparently Bubbles has All-Speak as a superpower, and I absolutely love that, mainly because they're gonna keep on bringing that up, and I love it, honestly. But the little interaction that they have in the fight with Fuzzy at the very end of the episode is just... it's really not that good, to be honest, and Buttercup really thinking that she can hit the banjo in the head is going to work. It never draws a dime, and she should really know better than that. The squirrel is a cute accompaniment, but it's not really enough to save this episode from going down near the bottom. It is, however, better than Insect Inside. You have no idea how hard it was for me to say that. This, however, is an episode I remember a lot from a VHS I had, the series I had when I was younger. Bubbles is also just me with choosing a plushie to sleep with, and Blossom editing the Benjamin Franklin quote is oddly amazing writing, and it fits well with her. But I feel like her and Whacker Warder could really go for blows on which one was the correct one. One thing I will say, however, Buttercup really needs to stop making Bubbles cry, for fuck's sake. She does get her comeuppance on that, however, and I really, really love that in this episode because she deserves it. The Utonian bravery speech in this episode lives in my head rent-free forever, and I love it a lot, and it is actually pretty central to how the entire episode comes to a close. However, the main villain in this one, the Boogeyman, being voiced by Gantu, is such a trip for me given how smooth his voice is in this. Plus the whole vibe of actually an alternate dimension underneath people's beds where monsters lie is an outdated concept, but they make it work very, very well here, as it's just one big nightclub and the monsters themed after 70s and the 80s is wild. The whole idea of them blocking the sun out with a mirror ball is somehow genius, and the fact they blow it up with a Star Wars homage is amazing. Plus, it doubles as a good Bubbles W episode, so, you know, it's gonna go pretty high up in my personal rankings for this season. A surprisingly dark episode revolving around the mayor, with the villain being a supposed dead magician. Not super into the plot, and Abracadabra being a zombie magician is kinda whack, honestly. And especially with Buttercup of all people not being down for being down a zombie. I figured she'd be one of the first to beat a zombie down. Like seriously, Buttercup in the zombie apocalypse, she'd be throwing hands like nothing else. Knowing more about the mayor is fine, but the fact it goes for a somewhat morbid finale and doesn't even have it work well for the end with Blossom almost dying, it's not really what I'm super wanting to rewatch anytime soon. Definitely better than the Fuzzy Lumpkins episode though. The Gangrene Gang are back already, and this time the gig is crank calling people from a payphone, and then finally once they manage to get him out of the office, the mayor's hotline phone. The episode honestly feels like a downgrade from their first episode, but one of them being able to use different voices to their advantage is a neat trick that I foresee not being used again often. No villain solidarity with them slicking the girls on assorted villains is kinda funny. Truly it is a dog-eat-dog world in these early seasons. Also, Mojo being sassy to them instead of fighting back is a weird bit, if only for future continuity. Mojo, Fuzzy, and him being the ones to beat up the Gangrene Gang is a very satisfying and funny ending, I won't lie. Makes the premise worth it. The ending is also very good for a change up, with them being the ones the narrator quotes for being in the ending. I love it when that happens, honestly, it's just so good. So him is back as a main villain again, and his whole thing this time around is making everyone hate the girls, which works again pretty much on the whole probably actually the devil thing. Reminds me a lot of the Blackwater Mist from the Garlic Jr. saga in Dragon Ball. Him gets really horny at points in this episode though, like uncomfortably horny. The logic of they wouldn't hurt them once they love being used against him's plan is a nice little bit of logic, but you gotta love how they do the whole hurt us more than it hurt you joke by the end. Punching out Utonium is wild to see out of context as well. Him's plots have been really the best one so far, even if this one is predictable than the last one.
The city of Townsville is on fire!
Jesus Christ, narrator! The episode revolves around some kind of Superman, Johnny Bravo combination, Major Man coming in and one-upping the girls at every turn with obviously planned stunts, agreeing with Buttercup on his shenanigans being corny as fuck though. His theme song even is a bit corny, not gonna lie. Yes, I get that's the point, but it is really corny. The mayor treating it like a breakup over the phone is nuts, however, but also, I think we kind of see the mayor being worse in each season, so that's no surprise there. You can kind of tell where this episode is going to go before the second half, however, especially given the obvious performance by the robber at the beginning, but the entire town falling for it and then being so blasé about it by the end as he gets called out gets me every single time. Although, I will say, the second kaiju this season, what kind of universe do they live in where that is just a thing? And also, do they have kaiju on their beck and calls as well? Like, if they do, I love that. Mojo's back in his own episode finally after 13 segments and kidnaps Utonium as his first act. Already an upgrade. Also, the reveal that Mojo was one of the professor's pets in this episode is a major plot point moving forward, so big moment here. However, the reveal on this gets retconned later, so it's a bit interesting lore-wise. Simple jealousy and neglect as a villain origin story works oddly well for Mojo, and him gaslighting Utonium to give him powers like the Powerpuff Girls, and Utonium going along with it because, well, he's right in simply that they only have themselves to blame for this. The fact he pulls out the act by copying their eyes as well as their powers is funny. The fight immediately following it with Mojo curb stomping the girls alongside a literal brainwave move is amazing. However, the reveal of Utonium blocking out all of his memories of Mojo prior to his transformation, and having it all come back once he gets the powers and wrecks up shop as well, as revealing the truth that Mojo was the cause of how the professor put the chemical X in the first place, and Mojo's breakdown at the end of this is such an insane finale. This is a really good episode though, gonna go up near the top of the list already, just gonna tell you right now. Pokeerk's focused episode this time, and honestly it's not a good one to be blunt. Having a kid literally eating paste as a bit of an episode is just really uncomfortable. Some of the kids having some really gruff, adultish voices is a funny bit, I won't lie, but Buttercup egging on the bullying is kind of fucked as well. Even flinging paste at Elmer, that's a step too far in my opinion, and being unable to say sorry, however in character it is for her, is still not okay. The kid having his own little Joker moment, however, by eating a radioactive fly and turning into a paste monster as well is, I want to say, more disgusting than Roach Coach, to be honest. Doing all of this, they leave Miss Keene stuck to a wall in the final battle. What the heck? And while the issue being resolved by Buttercup apologizing feels a bit messed up, I get where this whole thing is coming from, but it's really not a good episode, and I really will never watch this again after this little rewatch. Lowest one so far. Here's another episode I remember a lot from that aforementioned VHS, and it's the Blossom develops ice breath powers and abuses them episode. Heatwaves confirmed to suck. I live in they happen all year round and it sucks! There's a weird little Tom and Jerry reference in this episode and I love that little bit. Once again, Bubbles being shown to have all speak being confirmed with the Spanish line. Miss Keen being a bit snippy with the AC issues, however, is way too real. But also, sending the kids outside in a heat wave is asking for a really bad time. Meanwhile, Blossom's whole pipeline of, yeah, this is good too, actually misuse is bad, and then a meteor hits was a bit too sudden, I won't lie. But what can you do in an episode that only amounts to about 9 to 10 minutes? Like I mentioned, these episodes have a breakneck pace. The fire breath part at the end, I think was meant to be a joke, but the elemental breath as a keeper is gonna stick, for better or for worse. This episode is apparently Craig McCracken's favorite episode in the entire show. Guess this has a lot to live up to. This episode establishes that they have a VR room in the house somewhere. I'm not even gonna wonder where it's kept given the layout out of the house from the outside, but damn Utonium. Bubbles, however, trying to be a bit tougher as an episode plot is really good, but it's taken a bit too far. Again, the point of it, sure, but between Bubbles going too hard out of spite and Blossom continuing to tease in return, it's a bit of an odd episode. Also, they show blood in this episode, and it's quite a spectacle given this is only season 1. I think this is the only time they ever show blood on the show as well, so that is wild. Bubbles proving that she can take down Mojo on her own is an incredible feat, however. I love that beatdown, love this episode as a Bubble stan, but I don't get why it's Craig McCracken's favorite episode in all honesty. Sorry, Craig. I just feel like we're gonna have to agree to disagree on this one. This next episode, however, got nominated for an Emmy alongside Bubble Vicious, but I feel like this one is the one they were focusing on, and honestly, it shows because this one to me is a classic. This is a POV episode of the mayor having to hear multiple sides of one incident from the girls, and the way they tell this is just so good. The fact that they get away with having an entirely audio-only section for nearly the first 2 minutes of a 10-minute episode of a kid's cartoon is just intriguing, and it works so well. The clashing styles between the 3 stories being told is nice, and the 4 styles in one episode is so dynamic, and it keeps this episode being so memorable. I'm surprised that more people don't see this as a top 10 episode to me. The whole reveal of the mayor being nude the entire time as I was saying this whole thing and the girls laughing about it is pretty odd and juvenile, but it's a nice little additional bit of storytelling in an already great episode. It's going up near the top of the list, not gonna say it's at the very top, but it's up there. Oh my god, it's a kitty episode! I wonder how they make the cat evil. Utonium's fake out almost got me there when the girls were trying to sell them on keeping the cat. It probably would have been the most unrealistic moment for him if it were legitimate. The girl's immediate reaction was to prepare for rejection after setting it up to butter up Utonium was kind of funny. Utonium being possessively possessed is also a nice bit as well. The heist was very well animated, but I say this as a cat person, however, how dare you make a cat evil and not a dog yet? Shame on you. The fact I foil it by getting stuck in a tree is funny as hell though. It makes it almost worth it in the end. So, admittedly, they have been building this up slightly with the mayor's throwaway lines about the election, so I guess this was to be expected. The narrator basically being part of his campaign ad rehearsal was nice, until that last line, sheesh. The fact that the incessant campaigning accidentally makes Fuzzy a part of the story is something I guess I'm a fan of. The citizens are still idiots, however, but I think 20 episodes in we might be used to that by now. Utonium getting punked out and the mayor having the rest of the Lumpkins family is quite a trip. However, Buff Mayor is just like Master Roshi, and I don't know how to feel about that comparison. Surprisingly, it's not a terrible Fuzzy episode, but it's saved mostly by it being a duo with the mayor. Following Mojo's morning routine is a bit of an interesting way to work with an episode. The autistic brain executive dysfunction over the eggs is such a mood though. Hey, fun little game you can play at home is take a shot every time he says the word curses. This episode is just every neurodivergent's worst nightmare compiled into one. How this episode has Mojo and the girls nonchalantly just interacting with each other makes me feel like they're not really mortal enemies at the end of the day. The entire second half of the girls in Mojo's lair is hilarious by the end. They have no respect for other people's property, however. Another very good Mojo episode, but I think it's a bit below Mojo's Rising, honestly. I hate Rainbow the Clown off the bat. Him getting covered in bleach felt very satisfying. When he turns into that creepy mime that turns everything around him grayscale, it's kind of an upgrade, honestly. Bubbles, however, having a meltdown over the lack of color is hilarious. I love her in this episode. The fact that, like, no sound is present in most of the episode once it turns black and white is such a nice stylistic choice. Bubbles turning into the last one left untouched is also a very nice piece. I really love that this is also kind of a focus episode on her. The musical bit at the end is iconic and I won't hear anything bad about it. Tara Strong has sung better songs, however, but I feel like that's the point of Bubbles' character, that she's not really that good of a singer. Them beating up Rainbow the Clown at the end after he's turned back to normal was so good to see, though. It's another one of those episodes I watched on the VHS, and it's another classic, with it being the first full-length episode of the series to this point. Mojo destroying town and being beaten up by the girls 3 times before having his breakdown is always a nice opener given the episode's events. And the fact that Mojo never thought of making his own set of counterparts to the girls until now is interesting given how he was an assistant for Utonium for so long. Granted, he probably doesn't remember it, but using the opposite of what Utonium used, that he literally rips a puppy dog's tail off, is neat, but did they pretty much have to say that Chemical X could easily just be rank toilet water? Hold my barfing for a second. I love the Rowdy Ruff's designs, especially the backwards baseball cap on Butch. Third kaiju now this season. I have to ask, where are they coming from? The main fight between the two sides of them has to be the best fight in the series so far, and the fact that it takes up the majority of the second half of this episode is so good. Really goes to show what having a longer time frame can do for this series, and the fact that it's played up like a shonen battle meets the death and return of Superman is so amazing. Miss Bell giving the pep talk they need to win is also really good, considering the fact that she doesn't really get used to a lot of these plots. But them turning up the charm is such a fitting way of them being destroyed, and they actually kill off the Rowdy Ruffs. Top of the list! The fact we get such a big explanation of Townsville finally at the end of the first season is a nice bit of world building for what's to come. Also, apparently it has enough space to have a little Tokyo nearly the same size? Cool. Probably explains where all the kaiju are coming from. The artistic style of the photo montage is amazingly well done. Good to see the ice breath is still a thing as well. Speaking of the kaiju, however, big kaiju this time. However, Utonium being a nice concerned parent that he builds a giant mech to be able to fight crime in is sweet, if a bit concerning with his resources. Seriously, where does he get this money to make this? Them needing the dynamo for such a big task as the kaiju and being forced into it by being grounded is a very fitting way for Utonium to be forceful about taking care of them. Gotta love these little slight dad moments from him. Dynamo basically being an amalgamation design-wise of all 3 of them. Blossom's burr, Bubbles' pigtails, and Buttercup's glare is such a nice touch as well. And the fact that the mecha versus kaiju battle takes up the entire second half and is capped off by the mech dancing as little Tokyo Townsville birds is funny stuff. Utonium ghosting them at the end is also just hilarious. A lovely way to end off the season in my opinion. And that's season 1 down. Honestly, we've got 5 more seasons of this and a lot of it gets a lot better from here, but you can definitely tell where some of the best episodes from the entire series come from in this season. So don't be surprised if the overall rankings have a few ones from this at near the very top. This one has a very good amount of really good, as well as very dated episodes to them. But it's only up from here, so let's get to season 2 already. The opener of this season is Princess Moorbucks's debut episode, and the animation already has a slightly less fuzzier upgrade as well with this season off the bat. The fact that the class and Miss Keen are just so desensitized to their powers by now they actually applaud when they save the hamster is also very nice, especially given what future installments will show. Moorbucks being told no about being a Powerpuff Girl, like being rejected for a job application, is a hilarious touch, and her retort to her not being able to buy superpowers is just to say, tell that to Batman, is also equally hilarious. The fact she literally buys herself a powered suit a la Iron Man that's designed like theirs makes for a nice dynamic of obviously corrupted versions of themselves. Her failing and the little puffs having jerk in them is a nice little bit as well. The suit then becoming its own thing after that when she goes full evil is also very good. Literal golden armor for the rich brat. Keen trying to be a good moderator and not have the school be destroyed is also kind of adorable. The fight scenes have only gotten better, and this first one at the end with Moorbucks is proof of it. Feels like a lot more shonen-esque fights, and Blossom's speech at the end basically outlining their entire manifesto is also a lovely coda. Great start to this season. Another Gangrene Gain episode. The fighting game at the beginning makes me wish there was a Powerpuff Girls fighting game made during the series run. Might have been a Flash game, maybe. So the Gangrene Gain end up being a part of Pokédex if only because of their juvie officer catching them and realizing they should be in school. And Miss Keen is okay with these most likely teenagers being in her class. I mean, I like Keen giving them a shot, but when the girls give you a warning, you need to heed it by now. The revelations of Billy being a Cyclops and Arturo being an obvious Mexican stereotype with a goddamn switchblade comb are two things I oddly didn't remember of much until now. I loved a little bit at the end where after the gang basically just causes havoc in her classroom, Keen getting around her own rules with logic is a nice way to show that she knows what she's doing, even when trying to be a responsible teacher. Nice. Her cheering them on as well is very satisfying. I really don't get why this truant officer guy is a thing. He never shows back up again. But Keen beating him up for daring to challenge her how to do her job is fucking awesome. Oh boy, it's this episode. The creepy neckbeard collecting Powerpuff Girls merch as the main villain is a bit iffy, I won't lie. And the fact that they have that many merchandising rights to have that much merchandise distributed around the city has basically got them set for life even with Utonium being a scientist. The dude literally stealing their stuff and later kidnapping the girls is fucked. Genuinely just what? Utonium and the mayor basically calling on a manhunt to find them is very awesome, however. Shows you how much they mean to Townsville even though the citizens are absolute morons. Friending the comic book guy with his only weakness, desecrating his collection, is oddly a fitting, if a bit insulting for the time, way to beat him. It's fine, don't think I'll be revisiting this one often. The ending bit is nice, love that they're doing bits like that more often I suppose, but still not really all that great. Having an average everyday person such as the neighbor end up wanting to be a villain? It's an interesting concept for sure. Villain backstory just being life is too normal, I wish to be evil is also quite interesting if you ask me personally. The fact that girls get out of a hostage situation the exact same day and then they have to deal with this dude's shenanigans is a bit messed up. However, the dramatic peeing scene is just the best, and I get why people meme this so hard. It's a fine episode though, although you can definitely tell that they're leading up to something with the fact that the wife may have her own villain origin story over a ruined dinner, which proves my theory you don't mess with the Stepford wives. The Powerpuff Girls canonically having a birthday means it's been one full year since they were created, and that is very wild to think about the passage of time being a thing in this show. Every villain in jail sending them something obviously evil is an ingenious idea. Nice to see them having a nice rivalry on beating them up. They do need to team up, however. The mech from Mojo, the missile from Morbucks, and the dolls being failures all work out well for the sudden twist of him coming back. Love that little fake out. The pinata being the thing that ends up being the wrecking machine is expected, but I love it honestly. Him trying to word it into a win for themselves is admittedly a bit funny given they failed equally as much. This episode is really nice though. It's really nice seeing all the villains like actually interacting with each other. We don't get enough episodes like that if you ask me. The girls getting tired of people asking for them to do small tasks is very much something I felt they'd have done by now. Utonium being a part of the cause, however, is a little bit iffy, I won't lie. The cops, however, doing absolutely nothing is very accurate to real life, #ACAB. The fact they first issue when they decide to take a break as a kaiju attack seems a bit unfair and a bit much, honestly. But the fact that they are trying so hard to have the citizens realize how to beat the monster in the electrical wires is so on point. Especially the toaster in the bathtub bit for several reasons. Like, I'll just play this clip real quick.
Why shouldn't you put a toaster in a bathtub full of water?
Because your toast would get soggy.
Yeah, you see the point, right? The citizens of Townsville are morons. Enough said. This is another episode that not only got nominated for an Emmy, but is slated as being the second favorite of one Craig McCracken. So, you know, high praise right off the bat. Episode is about a totally relatable topic, eating your veggies, am I right, kids? More world building in the form of Farmsville, insert Farmville joke here, is once again very lovely stuff. The absolute meathead family one is funny, however. The fact the entire plot comes from people eating broccoli and getting hypnotized from mutant alien ones is crazy, and I love it. And the fact the spores spread through contamination like crops would is equally amazing. The fact that Blossom just straight up eats one of the alien broccoli creatures like it was nothing. Fucking hardcore. Insert the fact that this line by Buttercup
Nasty.
was sampled in Backseat Freestyle by K-Dot. Right here. There's nothing else I can say for that. And the fact that the kids all come together and one of them has an NWO shirt in 1999, that is long past their prime. And the evasion part is just beautifully done at the end. Enough said. The fact the kids have PTSD and willing to eat their greens out of it now is hilarious, if a little bit dark. Don't be surprised that this one tops the list. Going from an eating your veggies episode to being clean is good episode seems like a bit of an interesting dynamic here, but I'll take it. Buttercup being the obvious tomboy aspect of being dirty is awesome is not all that surprising, however. The degree of which Buttercup gets dirty, however, gets to be a bit much, I feel. I get that's the point, but also like, come on, just take the bath already. Also, the town going full witch hunt trying to make her take a bath, well, I agree with it. It's also a bit much. Everyone in this episode just feels like they're a bit more exaggerated than normal. The thing that stops her from being filthy is even monsters of the day not wanting to deal with her smells. On point, but Buttercup-focused episodes are pretty 50-50 so far. And yeah, it's not really all that best given that this one isn't one of the bad ones. The episode being narrated and said in rhyme for the majority of it is a very unique touch off the bat. I tried the same for this, but I'm too lazy, I'm sorry. The Ukraine line in this one is a bit interesting to think of now, however. The Sandman being a villain though, sheesh, we're only in season 2 and they're already pulling out these characters. The collective hive mind dreaming as a superpower, that's interesting. Works very well for torturing the Sandman in his dreams. Love that little sequence, by the way. The fact he only just wants a good night's sleep, can't get it, and is then tortured seems kinda cruel. But using his devices at times would be a better tool. Wait, did I just rhyme there? Damn it! Another sleep-related episode, this time with a proper villain of the series in Mojo. Mojo falling asleep and his plans falling between the villains is a funny premise on paper, although I feel like the Amoeba Boys really keep getting the short end of the stick when it comes to this. Having the girls find the parts and building Mojo's weapon for the Amoeba Boys, however, is a bit funny. Mojo panicking the entire time too works very effectively. Mojo being accosted for stealing the built weapon is a nice moment for the Amoebas. However, if Mojo did spill the beans on the gum, he'd have probably won. Another Gangrene Gang episode. Once again showing them as delinquents. The fact they fake you out with Billy almost being run over is absolutely nuts. Good thing they saved them. Ace not even being sad for Billy possibly being dead is a little messed up though. Billy being nice to the girls for saving him is a nice moment, however. Here I thought after Beat Your Greeds, Buttercup wouldn't have an issue with greeds, but maybe it's just her character. Billy being helpful is so wholesome though, honestly. I kind of feel sad for him when Blossom loses it. He's just trying to help out. He's just being a funny little guy. Come on. The fact that the girls end up getting tied up and then Billy saves them and is still beaten up, while fitting, it feels a bit meh. Kind of like this episode, to be honest. Bubbles gets amnesia episode. I think I remember this being pretty odd, honestly. Bubbles kicking out Mojo and believing she is Mojo instead is really wild watching it happen again. Tara Strong trying to do a Mojo impression as Bubbles is like John Travolta in Face Off levels of uncanny, I'm not gonna lie. Mojo being an absolute sass machine in this episode is just amazing though, to be honest. However, Bubbles proving that she can 100% outlast her sisters in combat if she wasn't naturally nice is amazing. Mojo getting so fed up with the impression that Bubbles does that he hits her in the back over the head? Absolutely hilarious. The narrator's breakdown at the end, however, is an absolute mood. Oh boy, a Father's Day episode. We sure love those. Utonium getting obsessed over a golf club set is such a typical dad thing, it kind of hurts. Why is he distraught over the price tag, however? Should they be rich with the whole getting multiple merchandising deals thing? Or am I thinking too much on the idea of them having that much merch from Collect Her? The fact that the girls tried to hustle their whole Saving Townsville thing into paid work is very coy for them, but also a bit too real in a capitalist society. Imagining the mayor as a sugar daddy is quite an interesting thing. Blossom ending up stealing the golf clubs from the scene of the crime is a bit out there, but for going outside the box on her main character bits, it's interesting. Even the narrator is shocked by it. Utonium immediately getting caught with them when showing them off and freaking out over the aftermath is wild. Mojo getting kidnapped by Blossom is even more wild on that front. However, Blossom being wrapped up in 2 lies is a lot to handle. Blossom actually getting punished for it as well is a nice turn at the end, however. It's still a bit of an interesting romp, but it's enjoyable. Utonium having to be brought along for a parent-teacher conference due to the girls missing out on quite a bit of school as a result of being out all night fighting crime. It's quite real. Again, the clock puns at the very beginning of this episode really kind of set me off, however. Keen does make a good point on stopping them from doing the crime fighting at night. 60-year-olds can only do so much with lack of sleep. I sure know that feeling at 26. The cheese puns in this episode are also pretty bad. Just puns in these episodes are really bad, not gonna lie. Utonium trying to convince himself that what he's doing is the right thing is so anxiety-inducing, however. My fight-or-flight reflex is fighting this episode hard. And the little nugget of knowledge that is the ending bit mentioning Ben Frank's reasoning for daylight saving to be a thing is fucking hilarious, however. I really love it when they do these little informative bits, and the fact that it's pulled off like that, it's amazing. It's a top tier episode for sure. Another more Bucks related episode, and paying off Mojo to team up together to take out the Powerpuff Girls is a smart move. Finally love seeing the villains team up in some capacity. Mojo calling Morbucks a cheese puff is honestly the most insulting thing said in their exchange, and I love it. Mojo's plot actually working to such a degree like this is kind of scary. Makes you wonder if he would win if he would have the right resources. The reference to Help by the Beatles would not only be the last time that they make a reference to the Fab Four, but I think it works really well here. The script calls for me to do I cook in the pizza joke for that spicy meatball joke in the episode, but there you go, I guess. Blossom making it in time feels like it should be a cop-out, but knowing their speed by future entries, it checks out. Princess actually getting the powers for once actually feels satisfying. However, it feels that much more nice when Mojo takes them away at the very end because of course he has to. Utonium being obsessed with his work and once again getting obsessed over a pet idea is a neat thing to revisit again. Not a fan of the fuzzball design though. The only feed him once bit is an obvious pull at Gremlins, and I kinda like that those references in pop culture were still around at the time. It's a shame they're not as referenced today is what I'm saying. However, the escalation of needing to eat only once, them overfeeding it, and then it grows into such a grotesque size, and then once he grows really big, having the whole needing to feed only once, in general, to literal cannibalism the next, is jarring as fuck, however. Miss Bellum yelling at the mayor like she's had enough of his antics is a whole ass mood. I'm surprised she doesn't keep up this attitude for the rest of the series. And the fact that more of the Bebos arrive after only spells chaos for a potential future episode that I don't think happens. It's a pretty nothing episode, all things considered, to be honest. Another Pokeoks episode. I can already tell this is going to be a bit much. The Shy Kid having issues making friends was way too real. Bubbles being the only one to want to befriend him is also very on point for me. I just feel so uncomfortable watching this episode for a number of reasons. The neurotypicalness of everything really sets me off, and while I understand that Mike is in the wrong here, it's kind of messed up that he's treated as poorly as he is. The whole imaginary friend is real bit is nice, but also like, I'm sorry, this episode is bad. The ending is nice. It's the only good thing about it, honestly. Next. Oh god, we have a double up of these Pokeoks episodes. After that last one, honestly, gag me. The entire point of this is disgusting kid having cuties already telling me it's a bad one. Mojo using him as an evil plot works well given the weaponization of every little kid's worst nightmare. The nightmare sequence, however, oh god, that one is just way too much. Mojo getting it to work as well in quick succession, it's amazing, however. It does get a bit stale by the middle part, like, yeah, I get it. Levels of stale. However, the prison rape jerk at the end is fucked. I'm deducting a lot of points for that alone, but this episode is also just, oh god, it's a double up of bad. A bottle episode for a rainy day is quite an interesting premise, but I'll run with it. Blossom doing the narrator's shtick as well is pretty nice when they get to it. Bubbles taking command as mayor with the whole accented voice thing is adorable, and I love that she is able to do that. Them calling the mayor and him playing along is also really adorable as well. Utonium as Bubbles. Now I have seen everything, but it also feels odd that he'd seemingly be opposed to playing with his kids like this. I love them imitating their villains as well. Blossom as Mojo somehow works better than Bubbles as Mojo, and I hate that I have to say that because Bubbles as Mojo was so good. Them giving up and switching the video games is such an ADHD mood, I won't lie. Pulling out the cartridge was a step too far though. Do you know how bad of a mood that is? The ending with their game turning into a prediction of real events and everyone being bummed about that was funny. Yeah, it's a nice episode all around, and after the last two episodes, God, I really needed this. Okay, wow, didn't anticipate them to follow up on supervillains cliffhanger so soon. Harold Smith having to deal with the same monotony as the first episode of this is ironic in prison. So, true love and the family coming together is uniting to commit villainy. I can't fault a devoted wife like that, I guess. However, I kinda love that they create arson as their first bit of crime as a family, and then it ramps up to vehicular manslaughter against the Utonium family? What? The girl saying, your reason for villainy sucks is very funny, however, right to their faces. This episode is fine. Really should have just been put with supervillain as a full episode, however. This just feels so disconnected, I guess. This episode actually won an Emmy for Powerpuff Girls, and it's in a top 5 Craig McCracken episode as well, so obviously we're set for a really good one here. The montage of them doing their crime fighting shtick is awesome, and the entire concept of them being exhausted with too much to handle is an internal mood and is way too relatable for someone with way too little executive dysfunction. The fact they used it as a reason to create a fourth sister is neat. Also, them basically getting similar items to which was used, as well as them recreating an accidental spillage of Chemex is funny as hell. The fact they made something so imperfect yet so lovable is great. Makes what happens in the 2016 version that much more missing the point. Bunny, however, in this episode reminds me a lot of Tisiphone from Hades. Poor Bunny kind of doing it wrong initially is fitting. Bunny having to be stopped by the girls, however, when she does it wrong is kind of heartbreaking, especially when she disappears in the end. It's really lovely of an episode, however, it really tugs at the heartstrings a lot. It's no wonder it won an Emmy. Another Buttercup-focused episode, huh? I'm already a bit skeptical. Her showing a much softer side in this episode is a nice change, and even maybe some character development? Although the shtick on her part of being late to a beatdown is certainly an interesting way to start this one up. Having nice affirmations for your own thing is neat. Buttercup really should be judged for this, you know? The meltdown over losing it is real, and I have been there so many times over important things like this. However, I do have to note that E.G. Daily goes full Tommy Pickles in the meltdowns in this episode. Why is this monster double-cheeked up though? Answer that question. The whole point of the ending bit is a bit messed up, however. Like, why do her dirty like that? It's still a really good episode though. Probably my favorite Buttercup episode so far. Jesus Christ, Keen, why are you teaching these kids AP math this early into their lives? The girls going on vacation is a nice little bit. Somehow breaking the Speed Force and traveling through time is wild, however. Twisted Sister confirms Utonium did write it down, but given how long it's been, maybe it got destroyed when they tried to find the Chemex recipe. This episode, however, gives major How Long Is Forever vibes hitting all throughout this episode. It's kind of sad it doesn't have much time to really delve into it as much as that one did. Everyone they meet having their own little breakdowns is messed up, however. And the whole plot being done by him seems very fitting as the only villain that could have survived 50 years with that much destructive power. But also kind of spoiled by the title having demon in it. The fact this is the only time the girls properly all beat down on him is so gratifying, even if they go full demon to use the whole "they depend on you when you abandon them" bit to torment them. The fact that they take it as a sign to not go on vacation, however, is messed up. They need a break too, to be honest. The opening demonstration is proof as to the animation being a lot better this season, and I love it. Mojo selling Chemical X like a crack dealer in this episode to kids. It's certainly an interesting way of villainy. The moment where the disabled wheelchair kid ends up flying is a really nice moment, and I feel like this entire episode's plot point is excellent for just having that alone. Mojo is literally a crack dealer in this episode, however. What the actual fuck? Using Chemex to bribe them into beating up the girls is also just so wild. The literal just say no and monkey off our backside make it too obvious that this is kind of like a PSA. However, the mayor just letting Mojo take over, assuming the girls are defeated, makes him seem like too much of a pushover when he's actually done a lot better for the city in the past. The entire episode just being a huge drug PSA and not even being an engaging one, it's kind of meh, to be honest. Like, it's not all that bad, but also can't really say I'd revisit it anytime soon. Gosh, it really took this long to have a Miss Bellum episode? I thought she would have had one by now. Bellum being used in conjunction with crimes is a lovely little red herring, however, and the double entendres are interesting with Bellum and the mayor. However, it does give off major Clinton Lewinsky vibes, and given the fact this was around about 99, 2000 where that was still relevant, I guess I can see why they'd want to do that. The fact that it was all just Seducer, however, and her coming back makes this make a whole lot more sense once you realize Miss Bell really does not care for the mayor like that. In fact, she's kind of really been fed up with him for a while. And while I wish Miss Bellum did subdue Seducer, the fact that they can instantly tell it's not Bellum is a nice touch. But Bellum actually beating up Seducer in a fight scene is nice, however. Seducer getting her hair cut is a fitting end, honestly. And the mayor is still a dirty pervert. This episode's good. I really kind of wish that Miss Bellum did a lot more in the series, but I'm glad that she managed to get at least one cool fight in. Last season 2 episode, and this was the only season 2 episode from that VHS I mentioned a while ago with mainly episodes from season 1 on it, but this one is a bit interesting to say the least. The episode basically being a Mojo plot where he resorts to cross-dressing to get into a sleepover run by the girls is oddly one of the more memorable plots. The fact the girls don't fall for it is a nice sight, however, but the weird accent he's putting on is also a bit much. The entire episode just being one misunderstanding after another. The montage is a little nice, however. Of course, the shoe dropping for the plot of the episode is pretty obvious by the end, and the ending with the other girls beating up Mojo when the Powerpuffs are left powerless is a nice twist. Imagine this were the series finale, honestly. As a season finale, however, it's just okay. Okay, so I can definitely state that that was a major upgrade over season 1 in my opinion. Yeah, there were a couple more duds than usual, but there's a lot of really good plot lines in this episode, and the fact that one of the episodes is season 1 an Emmy has to be a mark of quality right there. And we're about to reach the halfway point in season 3, so let's not waste any more time. Let's see how they go with the turn of the millennium. Introducing a new villain in the opening episode is a routine I could honestly get used to, although these ones don't really stick around all that much and I'm really glad for it. A group of retired villains coming together out of spite against the Powerpuff Girls is an amazing concept, and the Ministry of Pain is a damn fine name, although I kinda wish it was used for literally anything else other than this. I get the whole respect your elders bit seems like an obvious setup, but alright, I guess they do need a reason not to beat up old people. Now, the obvious Superman and Robin pairing is just very propaganda-esque. It's wild, I guess, as well, but the fact it comes down to them just having to get them to work together and have an old people fight, it's fine, I guess. The suiting up jokes make me cringe as well. Yeah, this episode is just one long, your moral sucks sometimes Blossom episode, which is nice, but not really inspiring, and it's not really a good opening episode for this season. Damn, Blossom has to put no effort into her hair of a morning? Sheesh, I'm kinda jealous on that, honestly. Yeah, this episode's whole shtick about Blossom's hair is... it's better than the last one, definitely, but I don't know, honestly. The narrator's hair-raising situation pun makes me laugh every time, however, and yep, Bubbles is definitely a mood of a morning. Them butchering Blossom's hair, however, feels like a karma for having such good bed hair. Look, if I had that good bed hair, I would show it off as well, but she kinda does deserve it. The villain is just an angel from Evangelion. Look at it. I swear to God, that's just an angel from Evangelion. To be fair, everyone laughing at her hair is messed up, and I'm glad that it turns into the fix of the episode, however, but that additional hair mess up was warranted, I will admit. Yeah, this episode's pretty good. Suddenly having an episode of the girls in Newtonium are moving to the city is a bit of an interesting thing to do in a less than 10-minute opener. Yep, there's more Joe's Apartment vibes coming from their accommodation. This episode is also reminding me a lot of the Madeline in New York episode of that series. I don't know, did y'all ever watch Madeline? Shout off in the comments. The kids on the bus being mean is way too on point, however, and I hate how realistic it is. Newtonian being way too fake about his excitement is obvious as to where you can see this is going, especially with Citiesville being way too realistic and actually functional. And I guess, to be fair, they should have really known better than to destroy a bridge like that, but I guess the resolution happening. The ending is kind of dreary until the last minute, however. This whole episode is actually kind of dreary. It's not that good. Again, sorry. This one, however, is a really good one if you ask me personally. Utonium having the mayor on standby as a babysitter when he has to go out is certainly an interesting dynamic to pull upon. And also, Utonium also having more focus placed on his science stuff instead of just weird science he does from time to time. I love that, honestly. And the mayor pulling Mojo out of prison to be the Powerpuff Girls babysitter is amazing, given the fact that they don't take a shtick of using them for his gains and instead just turn the annoying kid dial up to 11. I will say though, seeing Mojo as a hibachi chef is amazing, and the girls torturing Mojo is such good shit as to how it works. And they get him so riled up, he can't even be bothered to put them on the right side of the bed. He's that done about everything. And the fact that they're correcting him on cultural events when he's trying to tell a story, as once again an odd bit of knowledge dropping, that's funny. I love it. They absolutely break Mojo in this episode. I love it, and I love this episode. Alright, we got our first full-length episode in a hot minute. It has been missed though. Now when and why does their house have a huge, weirdly placed antenna suddenly? Look, I'm not going to question it at this point, I'm just gonna accept it's a thing. The Freakin' Friday reference at the theater is a dead giveaway about the plot, cause it's basically just Freaky Friday for literally everyone in Townsville. Buttercup losing it over the concept of having fingers is something I love from this early bit, and Utonium's voice coming from Buttercup's body explaining everything. It just feels weird. The fact that the old lady is obviously Mojo for the hairdo is a nice touch, however, and using other villains as well to be the foils, also showing them as the complete opposites, is also nice, especially the Gangrene Gang is basically the Stacys from Recess. The fight scene of Swap Mojo and the girls getting constantly swapped around is also really good. However, I never want them to say Weeder Attack in this show ever again. The concept is an amazing ride all throughout, and the swaps at the end were ridiculous to the point of cracking me up entirely at points. However, the narrator and Bubbles being swapped around at the end was a nice touch to have Bubbles narrate the outro. Top tier episode. A giant ant attack to start things off, huh? I wonder where these things keep on popping from, seriously. Bubbles having issues with her eyes, I guess it's an interesting concept, but her needing glasses and getting teased about it by the other two girls, it's not the best. And also, why not try contacts as well, Professor? Or is that sort of the point here? Is he just in on the joke as well? The entire episode of them being mean to Bubbles isn't a good time either, I'll admit as well. The fact that the glasses amplify her beams, however, is a nice touch. Just being cured all of a sudden with a blast in the eyes is, I guess, laser eye correction surgery is a thing, but this is really not a good episode. This is below Fallen Archie's, for sure. Now, this episode is actually pretty decent for $4, given the fact that she ends up buying the position of mayor from the mayor is a bit of an interesting power play given the situation. That whole Turkish delight bit in this episode feels like a big Narnia reference with the room, but it's a stretch because Turkish delights are just pretty good like that. And the fact that she doesn't realize making crime legal applies to her as well is such a fuck around and find out moment. It kind of saves the episode. Bubbles flat out saying it is Moorbuck's fault is everything right now in this episode, and I love that she was the one of all of them to do it. And the fact that they outsmarted her ruling on it to mess with Moorbuck's where it truly hurts is such good schadenfreude. The fact Moorbuck still loses out in the end works as well. Love this episode. Oh, so that hamster from a few episodes and a season ago is actually coming back to Providence. Cool. Why is Mitch always such a shit in these episodes though? He's such an asshat. Apparently, according to the calendar, it's either 1976 or they just haven't updated the calendars in years because they're poor. That fake out of it potentially being nice kinda got me, to be honest. However, this is literally just an entire episode of Mitch being a shit and torturing a hamster, and it follows with his comeuppance is just... why? Blossom calling Mitch an accident is a fucked retort, I won't lie, coming from them of all people. And I swear this is just a retread of Pace Makes Waste, but with more predictable stuff, and the hamster is just messed up. Genuinely nothing to like about this episode. Showing a cop to be lazy and contradictory to them being seen as heroes? Nice. Honestly, totally based. Showing this as an entire episode of a resentful cop being really resentful towards the girls is a nice change of pace, given that the rest of Townsville has shown to be very flippant to them doing everything for them. The continuity nods in the weapons warehouse are also very good to see. The propaganda is kinda distracting, I won't lie, in this episode, but given the whole premise as a whole, I kinda get why. Also, the girls should be dead, but apparently they're acid proof? What? Yeah, this episode's nothing special, like, it's fine. Holy shit, an episode where the people of Townsville are actually being seen as competent? What is this? Okay, that's now kaiju number 4 for the series, I think. That's kinda cool. I'm kinda surprised it took us 2 seasons to go back around to the Blossom and Buttercup arguing and Bubbles just being stuck in the middle shtick from Octi-Evil. But glad to see it return somewhat. Seeing their plans not work out is a nice move to show that not everything is resolved through the bashing them or strategic plans. Is a nice change of pace again. Bubbles, however, getting tired of their shit and just doing her plan is good stuff. They need to show her off like this more often. And the quote at the end by Bubbles is everything. They both deserve that a lot. This is an alright episode. Not a perfect episode, mind you, but still pretty alright. With the title of this episode, it's obvious that it's a deja vu episode from the very first one of season 1, to the point they even reused the animation from that episode to boot at parts of the episode. The fact they call attention to it so blatantly as well, I don't know if I love or hate this. And the fact that the footage of that first episode looks so jank even before the animation jump shows how this series has improved in just 3 seasons. The setup for Mojo to have all this preparation done just for him to get beaten up in less than a minute, it's sure is a choice. Not even Blossom's quip at the end makes it any less to swallow. Honestly, it would be good as the original, but it's not as good given it's an obvious repeat and the payoff being very lame, honestly. It's not good. It's really not good. Ah, the old cereal box with a bunch of little goodies inside. That's really not dated at all. The robbery chase scene at the start is very nice, however. I love it when they have little bits like that. The fact the robber putting on a coat and removing his hat makes him unrecognizable suddenly is very interesting of a premise, I guess. The utter contrivance of the jewelries after getting put into a cereal box is actually interesting, and the fact Utonium found it too is a nice little bit. And I'm sorry, is that a Beast Wars parody? The cereal commercial parody just being a mix-up with Cap'n Crunch and the Trix Bunny is hilarious. The fact he really tries to pull the Trix Rabbit shtick is wild as well, but after 3 times it gets a little bit tiresome. And the fact he just wants the cereal at the end is kind of funny, but I don't know, the rest of this episode is, again, pretty lame. This season has probably had a lot of the lamest episodes so far. Honestly, this episode is really not that good either. It's pretty meh if you ask me. The only good things I will say is that the comic book character debate is 100% a real thing that I experienced when I was younger, so I can confirm that is definitely a thing. Utonium, however, does make a pretty good point, but the fact the girls take it in such a way is a nice premise, I guess. However, Utonium being into newspaper strips is an on-point adult thing, and Blossom as Wonder Woman, Buttercup as Spawn, and Bubbles as Hello Kitty, I guess, is surprisingly on point for all of them, but the fact it takes like half the episode and suspense to get to that point is such a downer in my opinion. Narrator being self-aware never seems to get old, and Utonium just getting tired of this shit is a mood. And the fact that the monster at the end just calls them out on what they're doing and tells them to drop the act and go back to their shtick is just so unique. But also, a casual lore drop for the monsters literally coming from a place called Monster Island? What? It took us 3 seasons to get that lore drop? Excuse me? Okay, so remember a few episodes ago where I said that Mojo was a literal crack dealer from Chemical X? Well, take that premise and just apply it to candy instead of crack for the girls, and that's kind of what this episode is. See, they got the usual antics with their monster, but the mayor rewarding them with candy when he was hesitant to pay them for saving the town is certainly an interesting choice. The fact that they refused to take a payment after they asked for it a few episodes ago is pretty odd, honestly. And also, having had candy previously, it's surprising they get addicted to it now, but I'm splitting hairs at this point. The fact that they call on Mojo to keep on going and getting the candy every single time by throwing him in jail, it's more proof that they're once again just not really enemies, more just doing a job of a friend. Mojo realizing he's being used by this and being fed up with it that he steals the source of it is amazing. The legit anger from the girls is such a rare sight that the prison fight scene is actually quite intriguing, especially given how badly he's bringing up. Like, that's brutal, like really brutal for them. The fact that they yelled at the mayor as well is very icky. Honestly, this episode is pretty alright, except for those little tidbits. I think it's actually pretty decent given what we've seen so far this season. Oh great, another cat episode. What on earth are they gonna do here? The fact that the mayor mentioned calling a day after the Powerpuff Girls and setting up a statue for them last episode, and he does this the next episode, has to be on purpose. And then suddenly Blob Monster. Okay. The fact that they have a fire cat formation as well, that's pretty awesome, I won't lie. The fact the monster is only looking for a cat as well is a weirdly wholesome change of pace. But, I guess it's fine. Once again, Bubbles having Allspeak rears its head, and what? There's actual animation in the final bit. That's wild, honestly. Finally, someone said it to the mayor that he doesn't do a damn thing around here. And then he has a breakdown. And it is, quite the sight, honestly. The mayor decided to use a hot air balloon to try and do more as a nice concept, especially given he does something with it instead of just failing constantly. Of course, him going overboard is pretty expected by this point, and him lashing out at the girls and causing a missile to launch is a sequence I never tire of happening because what even the hell? Amazingly though, punching the missile works? Don't question it, I guess, but yeah, this was alright. Getting to see the mayor actually do something for a change, that was a pretty decent segment, I won't lie. Yeah, it's pretty good for this season. The opening and this entire episode is a really good explanation that shows that they're still basically kids at the end of it all, even if they are superheroes. It's nice to have episodes and moments like this. Also, Bubbles kissing Utonium on the cheek is cute AF. The unfortunate reality of them having the scheme of the week thrusted into their house is unique, but also frightening. Them instantly turning on Utonium, however, is not cool, but them finding out he's sleepwalking and not realizing he's stealing them is an interesting morality choice. The fact it keeps happening the entire episode and the real villain is just the girls being kids who are in too deep again. I kinda like that these episodes, the more that they happen, Utonium and the mayor working together on a confession from them is a nice touch as well. I like them not being oblivious constantly. Yeah, this is a pretty good episode. Put it up there at the top. A bank manager being attacked by a brain-sucking morphing creature of some kind? Creepy premise. I love it. The fact it keeps happening with priceless artifacts and other robberies works to keep the suspense going with how it's set up. And the girls using the mayor as bait works pretty well, extra nicely given he's basically got no brains on him. I guess you could say this is a pretty nice change of pace, and I really do like the fact that they go for a much more darker side of things with this one. But yeah, it's a pretty lovely episode. Oh boy, it's the episode Lord Faust wrote that people thinks writes feminism interestingly. Femme Fatale is a nice villain name, and the design of her is a good job as well. The Susan B. Anthony coins bit gets me a bit, however. The fact she corrupts the girls over warped views on feminism is also an interesting way of doing it. However, I do like that she makes some solid points on the status of female superheroes. The movie quote is interesting given that they would be just under a year and a half away from their own movie by this time. More on that in a bit. However, if you take away the femme fatale angle, you'd think they just turn to the dark side finally. Them going after Utonium, however, I feel is a step too far. But I do love that Miss Bellum and Keen pretty much tell them to cool it works very well, and I love that they have them be integral to the plot more often lately. The fact they pull apart the straw woman arguments made by femme fatale and basically mention the entire history of Susan B. Anthony is another lovely show of this series being informational. Hell yeah, this is going at the very top of the list. Here we go with another full-length episode again. I love that they're becoming a little bit more common with each season. The fact that the narrator calls Utonium their father figure and not just an outright father is an odd choice. However, the opening itself is a bit sad because, like, can't they just tell the mayor to buzz off for once? No, apparently, as Speed Demon told us. Seeing them placing plushies on Utonium's workstation is cute and wholesome, and I love it. Hell, the entire bit following that when they have a sweet moment and they go to the movies together is also a nice bit as well. Until it gets interrupted by a monster attack. Utonium basically ends up becoming Iron Man to be with his girls. To think it took 3 seasons to get to this point, especially following Dynamo's creation. And guess what? I love literally all of this with Powerpuff. And then Utonium becomes an embarrassing dad, and that's a bit cliche, I guess. But it's also kind of adorable as well. But the fact that the girls set up Mojo again to have Utonium go back to civilian life, it's a little bit mean of them, but them interacting with Mojo like that again is a nice touch. This is a pretty good episode as well, again. Yet another Buttercup-focused episode. Don't know how I really feel about that. Although I do feel Buttercup with the cleaning up, honestly. It is a major mood. I feel like this whole episode's premise revolving around the Sacagawea dollar bit got me as an Australian, given that this was released initially in 2000 when it was becoming a thing. It went over my head then, it went over my head now, and I don't get why they made an entire episode about it. Buttercup getting so excited that she punches out Bubbles' tooth. That's an on-brand moment, but also, oh gosh, Bubbles with a lisp is adorable. But my god, Buttercup, can you go one season without abusing Bubbles? Buttercup getting really apologetic over punching out Bubbles is a big step up from season 1 where she couldn't do it to save her life and paced. It turning into a Buttercup beating up Bubbles to knock more teeth out premise loses a lot of points, however. But it becomes a bit better when she knocks out Crook's teeth instead. Getting so desperate to beat down Mojo, the Gangrene Gain, and Fuzzy for teeth is also a bit of a step here. The beatdown at the end that she got is a bit deserved. This one was a bit of a better one to swallow given the circumstances of most Buttercup-focused plots, but I think you all get why I'm not really a big fan of them these days. The opening monologue in this episode being shared between Mojo, him, Morbox, and Fuzzy before finishing with Utonium is pretty neat. All 4 of them finally clashing to beat down the girls is funny as hell, and the fact that they all beat them down together as a group, it only took them 62 episodes to finally get the idea to team up together, and it works! This is why I was always saying this! The fact that it turns into a blatant Beatles parody after that is funny as hell, however. However, take a shot every time they reference a Beatles song in this episode. It's fun, I swear. Mojo as Lennon, however, is a very interesting move, and the twist of Moko at the end is a bit of a sad move to play on Mojo, not gonna lie. But I guess they kinda needed it to do the Yoko Ono bit, so I kinda get it. This episode was actually pretty good as both a bit of a parody as well as a pretty decent villain episode. So I guess it's gonna be up there for this season. This is the last one I remember from the VHS I owned when I was younger, and this is also the one I mentioned in the Teen Titans video as being similar to Can I Keep Him? The fact that Bubbles has been keeping animals in the house for a while now, that Utonium has to be a stern parent for the first part of the episode to have the point stick, it's oddly nice for a change. But the fact that she's trying her hardest to keep it a secret, but you can't hide a whale doing damage to the structure of the house, Bubbles, what are you doing? But why was Bubbles' first idea to bring a beached whale home when all he probably wanted was to be put back into the water? She really needs to watch Beach Days. The ending is a nice little sentiment, however, with Bubbles freeing the zoo animals. That's pretty rad, honestly. Ending the season with a Gangrene Gain episode is odd, I will admit, but it's nice that they have a solo outing again. So the combo with their snacks and the beams by the girls is able to give them powers as well. Odd, I guess, but I'll buy it. This is a pretty nothing episode, honestly. It's harmless, and I guess the fight in the second half is a nice little rub, but the whole part of their powers going away once it's digested makes for a quick and easy cleanup as well. But yeah, as for previous season ending outings, this one is a little bit more on the weak side. Yeah, it's not bad, not great, but it's definitely somewhere in the middle. Yeah, honestly, Season 3 was probably the most mid out of all of them so far. I kind of get that this is probably the midpoint of where we would be at this point, but also at the same time, this is also the last pre-movie season that we're going to get to, because every season after this point basically gets a bit of an upgrade from the movie onwards, especially next season, because that was done during production and even was done after production, so we got a lot to talk about there. But speaking of that movie, however, just gonna gloss over this one real quick. I'm not gonna really go in depth with it because it's a 70-minute movie, and if you don't have enough time to go on and watch it yourself, yeah, I'm not gonna go into too much depth. I really like that this is an alternative interpretation of the origin story of the Powerpuff Girls, however, but it also kind of retcons certain bits that we've kind of already gotten used to. Like, I get the fact that the professor might have potentially blocked out a lot of his memories of Mojo, but also, if the girls were there at that period of time, wouldn't they also remember the events of this movie happening as well? And I get that not everyone was on board with the girls originally, but most of this movie seems like an exercise in misery for the first half of it, and especially within the middle portion of it. It's only in the second half, and especially in the climax of the movie, where I feel like things really pick up, in my opinion, and the music in this is probably some of the best of the entire series. That punk rock remix that was done by Biss, the original people that did the opening theme, that is killer in my opinion. This movie is pretty good. It's a good 70-minute retelling of the entire origin story, but given the fact that this is gonna get referenced a lot in the future, I guess I have to say it's alright. Look, it's good, it's not bad, it's got some really good aspects to it, but I don't really see myself coming back to rewatch it as much as a lot of the other Cartoon Network movies of the time. Not that there were many, mind you, but you get my point. So we start off season 4 with the idea of being thrusted into an adventure already in progress. It's very interesting, especially with it being a full-length episode. Him having kidnapped Utonium and forcing the girls to solve riddles to get him back is also a very nice moment. The ingenious way they managed to get through every single one of these riddles, especially the ones where their powers are limited by hymns, is a very nice way about going a plot like this. The "Aber kiss my butt" line gets me, however. Also, where the hell does Blossom just have an abacus lying about? The one truth, one lie, one question riddle always seems to be the one that gets messed up a lot in media. However, this has to be my favorite way of having it show up next to the Paradox Bros and Yu-Gi-Oh! And in the quiz when Bubbles manages to score the best of them all with a flower design, I love it. I wish that got me to pass my exams, however. The mayor's surprisingly being smart for once is a very nice moment. The fact that they fumble it at the very last second is also a nice twist. Second only to the twist that him was running the other diner, and the entire episode was a bet between them and Utonium as to whether or not Utonium would have to pay the tab. And the girls and the narrator being flabbergasted at this, not even the regular ending plays. It's really hilarious and a lovely start to the season. The average American town bit is the first moment I realized as a kid watching this. Oh wait, this is America? The Powerpuff Girls Go Hollywood as an episode premise is something I'm glad that they are using a 21 episode format to their full potential. Given the fact their movie was only a few weeks out from release when this aired, it's no surprise that they did this either. The fact that Bernstein instantly becomes controlling after starting up enrages Utonium is such a lovely dad mood. Utonium being the only one that ends up knowing the truth is such a unique feeling, getting to the point of cross-dressing is hilarious to get to the point. In a very nice way I say that, of course. The fact they figure him out because he's not even trying to hide the fact it's a shoddy production, that it's even a production at all? It's hilarious. Also, Utonium punching out the director is awesome. Decent episode, however, it's not as good as the last one. First episode with the sudden animation jump that came after the movie. Expect this to be inconsistent for this season. Buttercup being an absolute shitlord to Bubbles again is annoying, I won't lie. But I feel Blossom so hard on this. So it's a him manipulating Bubbles plot again. You'd think she remembered the last time this happened, but that was 3 seasons ago, so I guess it's fine. I do like him being used more, given that they haven't been around as much the past couple seasons compared to the other villains. Bubbles having an existential crisis, however, the monsters being made by her is very on point. Bubbles erasing and then remaking the monsters she made is a very unique way to finish them off, honestly. I'm loving these Bubbles-centered plots again, to be honest. Starting off with a career day plot and then suddenly, boom, a time travel plot is kind of what I would expect of this series by now, I won't lie. Utonium casually making a portal through the goddamn 5th dimension reminds us all that while he may be a scientist, he's a nutty professor at the same time. The PSA style for the 50s is so wild to fit with the time frame. Seeing a tiny Keen and a tiny Utonium in the past is kinda wild, especially seeing Utonium as a prankster. Does Mojo not realize that if he kills Utonium, he dies as well, or does he not understand the concept of time? The fact that Mojo is now twice-fold the reason why Utonium did what he did is wild. You'd think he'd stop by now at this point. Oh wait, I remember this episode. This is a crossover with the characters from that Dexter's Lab spinoff, I think. Utonium being on standby for a phrase signaling the apocalypse is just massively on point for anxiety reasons, and the fact that the show that they end up watching as well, with the acronym spelling out awesome, is just so cheesy. The speech bubbles after the fact is also even cheesier. So the heroes they present in this episode are very much stereotypes or just Sentai heroes, but also having Major Glory appear basically confirms this and Dexter's Lab take place in the same universe. You'd think, anyway. The girls getting excited about the entire summit is also just very adorable. It's nice to show them getting excited about things like this. But the fact Utonium is right to say that they are as good as the other heroes is a genuinely sweet moment, but rightful thing for him to do. The sexist behavior from the heroes, however, is a bit icky, to be honest. Bubbles just going easy to start when she doesn't realize one has to win is hilarious. Also, very sexist behavior from everyone to the girls in this episode. Good on Blossom for calling them out. The girls still going out of their way to save them at the end when they get in trouble is a nice moral, but it is a bit iffy. The ending with them being put into Powerpuff Girls-esque outfits gets a smile out of me, however, but it's still not the best episode of this season. It's another animation jump episode, and the narrator's longest introduction yet gets to be a bit much near the end, I won't lie. The pony segment is a bit of a foreshadow for Laura and Faust, don't you think? The plot about the rain-containing nanobots that wrote everything for carbon is wild. Utonium going full scientist mode in this episode is always nice to see, and I love that he just has a big old shrinking ray lying around. And the girls being shrunk down to fight the nanobots is funny, and pretty ingenious, to be honest. Utonium having to make sure they don't get squished is a nice little side bit. Good to see he's getting involved. The nanobot fight is just incredible, and especially the giant monobot fight is also a nice twist. Especially with Utonium just squishing it. Yeah, don't know what else to say. This is pretty good. It's an animal plot involving Bubbles again. Thought we would have learned from Helter Shelter, but here we are. The fact Utonium immediately breaks it to them that the squirrel may have not made it is a bit harsh, but it is a nice moment. Bubbles trying her best to help the squirrel out is nice, but also like, you should know better by this point, Bubbles. Come on, remember Helter Shelter. And a sudden Mojo plot hijack feels weird as heck in the second part. It coming around with the squirrel saving them was nice. Them wondering how it happened was pretty funny though. The all speak with Bubbles returning is amazing continuity and I love that keeps happening. A nice montage of Bullet helping them out and fighting crime is a nice little moment as well in this episode, but Bullet finding the eagle that took it out and beating it up with its new powers is an interesting moment. The ending with Bullet wanting to return home and stay is sad. However, nice little bit at the end with Blossom and Buttercup trying to do the squirrel speak. It's stupid, but it's funny. And I love it. Excuse me, the library just heckin' exploded. What? Okay, the girl's facing off against a giant spaceship somehow doesn't feel out of place in this episode. Blossom without her bow, it's just cursed, I'm sorry. However, the cashier bit that we see in this episode feels a bit racist, and the girl's getting desperate enough to ask Mojo for help is a little bit iffy. Them gaslighting Mojo into helping them is gold, however. Easiest way to get them to help them out. The alien matching even Mojo, however, is a wild twist, and the alien basically being Kang the Conqueror is funny as well. Mojo going full monkey and saving the day. That is funny to watch whenever he just goes full monkey, I'm sorry. So this is like, what, 4 times now Mojo has saved the day? You'd think he'd be desensitized by this by now. Utonium's college friend coming to visit, turning out to be his namesake. A dick. Him seeing the girls and instantly going, oh, money-making scheme is pretty scummy, but it's expected. Utonium basically going defensive dad mode is amazing, and I wish they showed him doing that way more often. Utonium made the right move of cutting Dick out like that. Seriously, absolute dickhead. I'm sorry, but this is just the Alvin and the Chipmunks movie plot. I'm sorry, but the fact that knockoffs are literally just parodies makes me feel like you couldn't do this in the new show, as if basically already just like this. Gag me, honestly. Chemical Extreme, my dude? Come on. I mean, the dude swallowing the Chemical X is wild, but also, what the fuck? Dick being destroyed by his own creations because of lack of love is only fitting. The moment at the end as well is nice, but this is kind of the low point of the season for sure. So they finally got new neighbors after the Smiths got imprisoned. Surprised it took them that long to return to that plot point. The girls making a new friend of the neighbor's kid is nice, but the unfortunate reality of being a friend to them is kind of the obvious kicker in this episode. The kid outright saying she was an accident, and Utonium's reaction is a top 10 moment of the show for sure. I hate that I laughed at it, however. The sudden musical moment again after several seasons is a nice return. Also, the Powerpuff signal returning. What? Warbucks coming in and corrupting the neighbor to try and get her against them by gaslighting her to try and get a plot to be a Powerpuff Girl is diabolical. The fact no battle happens and they just leave with Robin at the end during Warbucks' meltdown, and Utonium telling the mayor to stop calling for small things when they're with Robin is also a very nice moment. I just love this episode. Top of the list. First major animation jump, and it's a Valentine's Day episode. Keen not being interested in a date and the girl setting her up with Utonium feels very familiar. The both of them instantly going, oh no, about it and instantly catch on to what is happening is hilarious. I'm glad that they just immediately recognize the plot of what's happening here. The girls instantly realizing the downside when Utonium focuses on being a buff man for Keen, and Keen becomes a stunning gal is expected. Them using the hotline to sweet talk is just cringe, and the breakup happening over a disagreement with a cat is on brand for Utonium given how season 1 ended up. Still not a really great episode, to be honest. It's kind of lame. Blossom getting down in the dumps over a few mishaps happening is a weird character arc. Okay, I get that you're really down in the dumps about this Blossom, but why leave home? I'm sorry, this episode's plot is just really much of a kick the dog moment for sure. Buttercup being annoying on the entire plot, and Utonium following along with Mojo's plot. I'm sorry, this just makes no sense. And this being one of Mojo's better schemes feels wasted in this episode, and what was the whole point of the conflict? And the hot dog scene with Blossom just sucked the life out of me. No, this is the worst one. This is the worst one. Move on. Finale time of the season already. Honestly, I'm kind of glad that they didn't do a really long amount of episodes this time, given how many more we have to go through. But Blossom being so done with making her speeches is amazing, honestly. An entire episode of things that make the girls get upset during a night is a nice premise for a hymn episode. And, nope, on the cloud. The weird, creepy Children of the Corn vibe from Blossom, the report card thing, is fucked mentally, and that's a really touchy subject for me as well. Buttercup's episode feels like an arachnophobe's nightmare, and I swear I thought I was gonna get jump scared by everything in Bubbles' nightmare. Pretty much every single bit of their nightmares just has a lot of things that still creep me out to this day. And yeah, this is a time. However, Bubbles going full Hulk mode trying to save Blossom is everything I needed, and the reality of Utonium getting scared too is pretty sweet. This is a nice little finale episode, and honestly, it's probably one of my favorite hymn episodes to this point. Pretty good finale if you ask me. You know, for a shorter season that we had to cover, I will admit that the longer episode format was really good. However, there were a lot more duds this season than usual. There were some really top tier ones in this one, however, but we've got about 2 more seasons and the 2 specials remaining, and oh Jesus, we're getting up there. So yeah, let's not waste any more time. It's up to season 5 now. It's the first full season of the post-movie animation jump, and honestly, it's so good to have a consistent animation style again. However, the narrator being used to the shtick after 5 seasons is so hilarious. He's just done by this point. The entire plot coming about due to the fact that the mayor is essentially evicting all the monsters from goddamn Monster Island, and I'm glad that lore drop back in season 3 actually meant something. And he's more or less just gentrifying Monster Island and it's to a strangely similar situation of the US and Hawaii. Is that intentional? Is this a political thing? I just love as well that the people of Townsville and the mayor are just the absolute worst in this episode because they're just like, no, get out of here. And they are genuinely awful in this episode. Then again, I think it's intentional based upon what we're seeing here. But also at the same time, the fact that there's a literal monster lawyer coming back around to right the wrong in a sense, it's great. I love this episode. But the monsters being okay with getting beaten up if they go back to Townsville is a nice little conclusion to it. This episode plot is interesting, but I love that they're going this far with these sorts of episodes 5 seasons in, and it's a pretty good start if you ask me. You know, I haven't really talked about it all that much, but Townsville apparently has had a talking dog this entire time, and they're just okay with that? But them bringing it back for a plot of its own after so many years of being a side character, it's really nice that they're using these characters like this now. Seeing Utonium with all those iron-on tattoos feels very, very weird. Now I have to seriously ask, what year is this series set in when the mug says 1997 on it? What year is it? Now I'm of 2 minds with this plot being somewhat alright, but also I get the fact that the dog is going through a lot of trauma, but also there's only so much you can get away with when using trauma and having a bit of a time with that. And the entire trauma being caused by bones being littered about, it's kind of funny, but it's also too samey to early season plots, if you ask me personally. Also, this slide right here.
I'm not a chubby crybaby. I'm not a chubby crybaby.
Same, Bubbles, same. Look, the dog is saying what we're all thinking to the narrator, but also last episode's quip was also kind of original. But I'll be honest, this episode overall, it's fine. Not as good as Monstrosity though. No, I'm not talking about this episode. It's not a good one. What do you want me to say? The mayor is the absolute worst in this episode, and honestly, everybody trying to pin the blame on Utonium for trying to help him out, when the mayor is being his absolute worst that he's ever been. And to be honest, the fact that the mayor has actually been a very good character in previous seasons, and the fact that he's such an annoying bastard in this one is just... I'm sorry, no, bottom of the list. Bottom of the list. Oh hey Amoeba boys, how long has it been? I feel like it's been since season 2 since we last saw you. This plot going hand in hand with a math lesson that's being done at Pokeoks is interesting, but I'm not sure if I like the mix of it, to be honest. With the entire plot literally just being the Amoeba boys learning how to multiply because they are literally cell organs. They can just do that. It's what you'd expect by now, but the scurvy bit was a little bit interesting given the fact that all they're trying to do is just steal oranges still. I mean, sure, why else bring them back if only just to be jerks again? Now, that whole mass bit in the fight was a nice way of tying it all together, but also at the same time ruining the Amoeba Boys' joy at the end was the worst. It's still better than the Mayor episode, though. You know, after 5 seasons, it has sort of been a wonder why they haven't shown what happens if somebody tried to actually rob the Powerpuff Girls. So I'm glad this episode finally gives us a concrete answer. However, showing Utonium being overworked again is a bit tiresome. Let the guy have a break. The girls actually tucking him in is a nice touch, however. I really love that. The robber not realizing that he's robbing the Powerpuff Girls until he sees a picture of the laser eyes and becomes an absolute coward is nuts? Like, buddy, you live in Townsville. You should know who they are by this point. The episode just turning into torture porn for the girls against the robber is odd, but enjoyable for a second half. However, Utonium just punching out the robber in his sleep was very funny, I'll admit that right now. And the fact that he could go on and rob Mojo next? Good lord, guy. Find a better career. This episode's really good though. It's going under monstrosity. I really do not like where this episode is going based upon that title. And oh Jesus Christ, no, it's a Fuzzy Lumpkins episode. Abort, abort, abort! Utonium just studying the Lumpkins like a nature documentary is a nice concept, but it turning into Blair Witch in the second part of it is wild. Aside from that though, this episode is just fucked. Like, Fuzzy thinks that Utonium is a woman with the mud on, and oh fuck, he's gonna marry Utonium. Jesus Christ, no, 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 no. Okay, fake fuck the girl, stop it from happening. While punching out Fuzzy on accident. I don't know, what the hell do you want me to say here? This is way too messed up. It's not as bad as Toast of the Town, but still, no! This run of episodes is really not looking good so far, and I really say that because this episode is really teetering into the red tier for me personally. The fact that it's a PETA stand-in episode, given the fact that there's very stereotypical hippies trying to protect Mojo of all people, is groan-inducing, especially given that this is 2004, mind you. The fact that they quote a certain ordinance in Townsville as a law yet aren't aware of his criminal record, and even cheer for Mojo as he commits other crimes has to make these people the dumbest people in Townsville, honestly. Honestly, the only thing saving this from being worse than Shotgun Wedding is the fact that Mojo is using this to his advantage. Otherwise, Jesus Christ, this is the most repetitive shit. I swear, in this season, they keep making the mayor more and more incompetent with each episode, and I hate it. I said it in Toast of the Town. He showed genuine growth in season 4 with moments of intelligence, but this is a huge backslide if you ask me. The climax of the episode with Mojo being dumped on an island with other monkeys was a bit of a nice touch to end on, however. But again, it's not going to save it to be very low on the list. It's not worse than Shotgun Wedding, however. The fact the first few minutes of this episode contain a song for Keen at the very beginning, it's really nice given the fact that they're still experimenting 5 seasons in is really good for what they're wanting to do here. And I love the fact that they're doing this. And it makes a certain episode coming up not that big of a surprise if you ask me. And the fact that this very stereotypical looking evil guy pops in, Mr. Green, having such a foreboding intro followed up by the sudden twist of him looking very nice if you ask me. The animation style of them showing off what they think will happen with Green was wild and nice, and I love that sort of like experimentation is really good as well. Reminds me a lot of the Bare Facts. I'd want this guy as my substitute teacher. He seems like a very swell guy and a lot better than most instructors I've had in the past. But the fact that the girls are so paranoid because they're used to things happening that go sour is kind of funny, I guess. But the fact that they're so down to racial or monster profiling like they did, it's a bit messed up. However, I really like this premise a lot more than Monstrosity. It's really good to see them experimenting a lot more with this stuff. Top marks for sure.
The Rowdy Rough Boys!
Damn, they're finally back after 4 seasons? I thought they evaporated. Well, not really. Him actually brings them back this time around, and their entire entrance of being the major rival battery returns trope, complete with even spikier hair since the last time that they were around, it's really good in my opinion. The fact that they have more of their counterparts' traits this time around instead of just being very stoic, gruff bad boys is kind of nice in my opinion, actually giving them proper flavor to them. We love to see it. And you know how I said about their first battle just being a huge shonen fight? This entire battle right here has to have late stage Dragon Ball Z written all over it, which, given the point that Dragon Ball had basically finished up its run in the US by this period of time, it's no surprise. But the fact that they don't just immediately go for the kiss like they did last time, the fact that they don't just go for that immediately, it's interesting, but it's also nice that it doesn't work anymore because him took that away, and it only makes them even more powerful. God, that's awesome. However, there's some really icky bits, if you ask me, in this episode. Like, ugh, no. The fact that the girls get ragdolled around in the second act, it makes you realize just how powerful the Rowdy Roughs really were originally, and without their weakness, they're basically able to beat them up without an issue. The fact that their new weakness is that they shrink when their masculinity is threatened is quite the secondary weakness. I think I like this one more than just getting kissed. The fact that they just don't get defeated and they come back as recurring villains now under Him's control is a nice little bit. And I'm gonna love seeing them pop up again in this and the next season. Really good way to bring the Rowdy Roughs back, if you ask me. This is going above Substitute Creature. Not many of you would have probably watched this one unless you had the DVDs, but I'm gonna be counting it because 1, it is part of the episode listing, and 2, despite its infamy, this is actually my favorite episode of the season right now, spoiler alert. It's an all-musical episode, and it's the only one of the entire series, and to be honest, it's really, really good. Like, there's no bits of dialogue in this entire episode, and every single bit in this 24-minute episode has got some kind of music in there, and everyone's singing the entire time. And the fact that not Jack Black Gnome was basically a new character brought in as the villain for this one, who basically says, hey, I can make everything better, all you need to do is just give your powers to me. It's a nice little plot, if you ask me personally. And the fact that this sacrifice essentially erases the villains from existence is a pretty big chain reaction, if you ask me. The town basically creating a cult in worship to the gnome, however, is a weird turnaround to the fact that they now no longer have to worry about, you know, the town not being destroyed all the time. Although, question in the comments, should I count the song Freedom Beef as American propaganda? Shout off in the comments below, I'm really curious about this. The gnome literally gets beaten by an actual paradox with his utopia. It's quite the complex and really interesting ending, however. And the finale song at the end with everybody singing at the exact same time is such a lovely thing as well. And, just because I can, mini list in the middle of this countdown for the ranking of all the songs from this real quick. Number 8, When It Gets Sun/Rain. Number 7, Sunshine Down on Me. Number 6, Give Me Your Answer, Normal Little Girls, Hear Me Fathers. 5, Wanna Make Us Feel Real Good. Number 4, Freedom Beef. Number 3, Best Day of My Life. Number 2, Why Can't We All Get Along? And number 1, Townsville's Going Down. Literally, the number 1 is quite possibly the best kind of villain song, if you ask me, and it's one of the more underrated ones in all of media right now. And I will defend that take with my life. This is going at the very top of the list, and do not be surprised if it's in the top 10 of the overall rankings. Just saying that right now. Oh god, that episode title makes me very afraid. And yep, it's exactly what you fear by looking at that one. It's a bedwetting episode. just end my life right now. Yeah, I'm getting so obsessed about the fact that one of them is somehow bedwetting, that they get sloppy and beating the villains. It's quite a real thing, honestly. Not that I would know. Them throwing Bubbles under the bus like that is harsh. Fucking hell. Utonium just having a big old dad moment again is really nice. Followed up by him going full nerd, which is also really nice. Kinda love that they're still at least getting Utonium's character right. Keen being more upfront about it is a nice contrast, however, and oh god, not gonna comment on the mayor. The reveal of Mojo being the one behind it to cause a prank because he doesn't like them is so petty. I almost want to do a 180 and say this episode is actually great. However, the P puns in this episode do dock at points, however. Guess it'll go below Shut the Pup Up, I guess. You know how I said about how I was really going to enjoy seeing the Rowdy Ruffs as recurring villains? Well, I'm kind of glad that they're already back, and Moorbucks teaming up with them is really good of a team up given that she'd have a harem of male Powerpuffs on her side. However, they just don't even allow that to have a thing to even happen. It's such a missed opportunity, I will admit. However, Moorbucks manipulating the girls to her side to team up with them to beat up the Rowdy Ruffs instead is an interesting twist to that, given the fact that, well, we've never seen them team up before. The fact that they don't even do anything against the Rowdy Ruffs and just let them destroy each other using Moorbucks' weapons is a nice move, however. Their blank expressions when Moorbucks rants at the very end is so realistic, and it's a fine episode. It's just fine. The weird prehistoric opening for like the first 2 or 3 minutes is interesting. However, the lead up to the caveman being frozen and leading it back to modern day is a nice little transition period. Man, I'm so glad that he's in there and we're out here and he's out here and we're in there. Meta commentary on the educational quote a bit is a nice nod to previous seasons being quite educational for its content. However, I do still wish they did that more often in these seasons. Of course, the caveman being freed is expected, and him going for the mayor's sunflower seeds is a funny little bit given the fact that he still thinks, ooh, seeds are currency. The mayor getting overly paranoid over the seeds being stolen is an interesting concept. However, it gets very annoying, to be quite honest, given the fact that it just gets so repetitive by the end, and the mayor just switching back to pickles by the end feels like it's a bit pointless, I guess. It's meh. It's going above safe Mojo. Oh my god, the Powerpuff Girls are having a clip show? They've really lost the plot now. A closet clean out as a context for a clip show is a constructive way of doing it, I guess. But seeing clips from pre-movie animated seasons compared to season 5 is just so jarring given everything now. The fact that we're now seeing scenes from Monkey Dog 3 times in this series and Monkey Dog 2 twice, that's 1.5 too many if you ask me. However, I do like the little twist that some clips were just original parts. However, it feels like a nice little bait and switch. However, I will say the grown-up bit, hearing Tara, E.G., and Catherine all sound more mature after 4.5 seasons of them doing higher pitches must have been a relief. It's not fun. Can confirm as a voice actress. The fact that Boomer and Bubbles are not a couple in canon is interesting to me. They seem to have the most chemistry out of all of them, to be honest. However, I will say if that Mojo episode happened, it would have been bottom tier for sure. Oh god, no, clip show Inception and the sudden swerve before a live studio audience ending. God, I forgot that was even really a thing. It's actually pretty decent, however. It's gonna go below monstrosity for me personally. Oh, it's a little white lie episode. A literal little white lie episode. It's a done to death concept, but let's see what happens here, I guess. So Bubbles' All-Speak includes sounds that only dogs can hear? What is your power, actually, Bubbles? Alright, yeah, it's a bottle episode with everyone in the house doing shenanigans and causing lies to break out. And the literal white lie getting bigger every single time. Alright, cool. The fact that it solves how you would expect it is fine, and Utonium really should be leading by example as being a better dad. This is the first episode in season 5, and I think in a long while where he's actually been shown as a bit of a pretty bad father figure, to be honest. And the fact that the mayor leads it to bring back is expected. However, it is pretty funny. It's gonna go above Seat No Evil though. Wow, a third Rowdy Rough episode of the season already. It's been really nice seeing them back again. The boys are literally mugging people now. Wow. We were getting caught and then kept in a containment beam certainly is interesting. Also, why do they have a containment beam and they've never used it until now? However, seeing Bubbles dressing up as Boomer as a sort of reverse drag is very nice though. She fits in oddly well given the design if you ask me. Bubbles going through all the acts as Boomer is still disgusting personally, but I really like these episodes where she gets to show her stuff. It's really good getting to see more Bubbles-focused episodes again. And capturing all of them is hella cool. Her destroying the machine by accident, though, is kind of funny, if you ask me. And it does make a good reason for them to actually escape again. Yeah, it's pretty alright. I'm gonna put this below Monstrosity, but above City Eclipseville. This plot essentially being used as a documentary for some Michael Moore stand-in feels a bit odd, but I can dig it. The use of the opening basically giving more detailed looks of Townsville as a whole is a very nice addition if you ask me. The point of view of a civilian during a battle during the series, it's pretty unique for this series so far. And this dude going up to multiple different side characters and getting rejected or given next to no info is a bit harsh, but a Powerpuff Girls Light episode is really good given that I don't think we've ever really seen that before. The dude getting all down in the dumps at the end as all he wants to do is just try and make one singular documentary as a passion project, but nobody else believes in him. It's such a realistic thing, honestly. Although this whole thing turns into Chronicle by the end if you ask me. The fact it's all contained within this documentary format and doesn't even break it for the narrator, it's really awesome though. This is one of the best episodes of this season. It's gonna go below See Me, Feel Me, Know Me. This episode feels like it's such a slight on early 2000s culture and imitatable behavior, especially on shows like this, as a slight against the censors and concerned parents, and I can dig this so much. However, we're 10 seconds into the episode and I already hate this. These two parents, they're just the worst. I'm sorry. I hate the people who are really trying to defend the ideals and not correlate it at all with what we've seen up until this point. I mean, fuck them, honestly. I get that it's the point, but also fuck them. That being said, showing the cops as being incompetent slubs is always a plus, because hashtag ACAB. Wasn't how it goes in the crisis, we have literal Mad Max villains, and I love it. To be honest, this feels like such a rehash of Town and Out, but a lot less mean-spirited to be honest, and of course making the people making the threat of a lawsuit live in a mansion and are just rich white twats. They're probably conservative Christians too, and I wish their house just fucking blew up. Fuck them rich twats, they deserved everything they got in this episode. Just for that alone, it's going above City of Eclipseville, but below Bubble Boy. Hey, do you remember the episode Sailor Mouth from SpongeBob? Well, now it's back! In Powerpuff form. I will say though, Utonium watching Julia Child cooking videos seems about right. Dude's way in over his head, however. However, swearing under immense pressure and one thing getting to you is an absolute rude. Bubbles getting exposed to the swearing is an absolute. This should be a turning point for her being corrupted arc, and especially seeing her use it without context. Keen looks like she's going to have a stroke, however, seeing that come from them. And to be honest, the mayor has had what is happening in this episode coming for him for a very long time. Although I will have to say, really? Toilet kaiju because potty mouth? So funny! And seeing another certified dad moment in Utonium realizing he was the cause of it the entire time is a moment I love so much. However, this is kind of a predictable episode. It's gonna go above Boy Toys though. Mojo Jojo having a yard sale? My god, they're having weird ideas now. Okay, no, but seriously, it's actually a really fun episode. Mojo having to deal with hagglers for his extremely high prices while super relatable. My guy, you're not gonna get anybody to buy that for that much. However, seeing other villains at the Gangrene Gang show up as well is a nice showcase of the villains all showing up in one episode and just not being me. The montage of the girls in the gang saving up money between them to buy up Mojo's stuff, it's additionally a very nice concept for an episode. However, when Buttercup says that your risky idea sucked a lot, you know you messed up. Although for real, gambling is wrong, even gotchas included. The mayor, however, being the one to buy the Destructor Ray, however, is very on brand, but also Genuinely, what the fuck? Why does it have a snow cone machine at the bottom? Selling the gangrene game themselves has to be some level of illegal. Like, I know that they're villains, but also, come on, that's human trafficking. I know Townsville has really weird laws and the mayor is the mayor about it, but it's gonna go above curses but below burglar alarmed. It's yet another one of these more experimental episodes, given the fact that the villain literally is one from a silent movie, and I actually kind of think that's really cool. However, Utonium being more interested in silent movies and trying to pass it on to the girls is a bit on brand given his more old-fashioned ways, and the fact that for the most part of the first half of it, it's just an MST3K episode with them commenting on silent films too, that's really funny to me. Utonium getting brought into the silent movie by the villain is a nice way to tie it all together, especially with the second half of it. And the instrumentation of the versions of the OST being used previously, just being changed up when they go into the silent picture is really nice. Max, the guy who abducted Utonium, being kind of a sympathetic villain, given his voice being so out there is nice, but also why did they trap Utonium in the picture again? Like, come on, please, give this guy a break. Aside from that, however, the uniqueness is the only thing really saving it. It's a pretty okay episode, that aside. It's going below bang for your buck.
Another robbery at the bank.
God, the girls are really just getting more disenchanted with hero life, aren't they? The plot of this just being that the deeds are being caused by cute baby animals is a nice twist that we haven't seen in a while. However, this is literally just another episode where the premise is the citizens of Townsville are fucking idiots. And the fact that they turn on the girls pretty much immediately is expected, unfortunately. And the fact that I'm saying that it's expected by this point is really starting to get to me. Honestly, this episode is a prime example as to why Townsville simply doesn't deserve the girls when they're constantly acting like this. And the whole thing being saved by nobody learning their lesson in the town and the animals just getting destroyed by some pre-K students is anticlimactic. I don't get why this is the last episode of the season, but yeah, I'm sorry. This season is probably the weakest one yet. Okay, yeah, I know I was a little bit mean on this season, but aside from like 6 episodes where it was actually pretty decent, and arguably one that's going into the top 10 immediately, there's really not a lot here to really come back to. Like, I could name only the 6 episodes that are gonna go into the green tier immediately as the ones that you should really come back to. The other ones, however, are nothing special, and in all honesty, it's probably the weakest so far. But we still got the 2 specials and 1 final season to go through, and oh my god, that's way too many episodes. Alright, yeah, we're going to the Christmas episode first. So, 'Twas the Fight is an interesting thing because technically it aired during the middle of season 6. However, the production order places it before season 6, and realistically, it fits a lot better as being a little bit before it, and also the DVDs feature it on the season 5 discs, so I'm going to put it just before season 6. That being said though, it's a pretty good Christmas special if you ask me personally, and Morbucks being the villain and being upset over the concept of being on the naughty list is very good to bring her back for, especially given that she would be the best villain for a Christmas one if you ask me. However, seeing even the other villains enjoy the Christmas season and being naturally not being that much of a pain is fitting compared to Morbucks just being the very big bad here. Her plot is actually very intriguing for a Christmas special as well, even for Cartoon Network villain standards. Of course, showing different North Pole interpretations is good, but it's interesting to show it as mechanical as it is. However, one huge complaint I have with this one is that the chase scene following Morbucks explaining her plan is really nice, but it could have been better if they found out without her having to point it out, and also the chase scene itself, it takes up like a quarter or so of the episode, and to be honest, it kind of drags on a bit too long if you ask me. And the plan failing because Santa knows who the girls are and already knows what's up here, plus Warbucks failing all because she gloated once again, is super in character. And the girls having to pull Judy for a depressed Santa at the end, it was certainly a nice little bit. Oh yeah, by the way, Santa is super depressed at everyone but one got on the naughty list, and I really love it because imagine if that's what really would happen in this day and age, just seeing more and more people have to go on the naughty list every year, and he just gets so depressed. I'm pretty sure he would have been drinking in 2022 if you ask me. One thing, however, this could have been way less than 40 minutes, but I can see why some moments could have been as they were. It's a pretty decent episode altogether, and yeah, it's nothing too special, but also it's pretty good for what it's worth for a Christmas special. So it's not green tier, but it's certainly close to it if you ask me. So you know how I said that there was going to be callbacks to the movie in later seasons? Well, this is one of the biggest examples of that, as this is literally an entire episode where the premise is just, hey, so what if one of the monkeys ended up actually escaping? And well, it didn't really go as planned, now did it? And the fact it literally stems from said monkey literally having their brains sucked out and rejected. The entire bit is that Mopey, the monkey in question, keeps on trying to help, but he does everything but help during it. It's a bit of a basic premise if you ask me personally. It's a Powerpuff Girls light episode until Mopey captures them. I do like that as a nice move, to be honest, but Mojo gets what's coming to him after his full-blown manipulation. It's pretty funny, honestly, but aside from that, yeah, this season's not starting off on a good note, to be honest. Utonium building a smart car is certainly not a plot I remember much of, if I'll be honest. The fact he literally just builds Kit from Knight Rider as well is pretty hilarious. However, seeing Utonium with a mullet is weird. So in the second half of the episode, it's basically Kit meets HAL 9000 as a better descriptor. Remind Elon Musk to not watch this episode. He might try to make a transforming Tesla model next. The fact they end it with a robot driver becoming placed into the car is pretty neat, but Blossom immediately calling Utonium out and realizing they no longer have a car is really funny, honestly. It's a nice little episode, and definitely an improvement over the last one. I think that's the first time the narrator's ever been interrupted by something before. And by a fuzzy beatdown of all things, it's pretty good stuff. A fortune cookie bit causing the plot is odd, however, the fortune does fit Buttercup pretty well, honestly. And the fact that Doctors of Townsville even treat their villains is another on the long list of reasons why they deserve what they get half the time. Buttercup being so traumatized by this event that she goes into the hills out of shock is a wild reaction. And is that Mako as the monk? Now, a Buttercup solo episode is nice after so long, but it's a shame it's the last one, honestly. And the music being used in the montage is such a lovely piece. Been loving them using different instrumentations instead of just the synths we've been used to for about 6 or so seasons. It being revealed that Mojo is a former student as well is funny to see. Him trying to provoke Buttercup when she's full on Zen is even more funny. And Buttercup actually getting character development again? I guess if this is the last season, may as well make it stick, you know? Overall, yeah, this is a really good episode, and given that this is probably the best one so far, and probably the best Buttercup-centered plot at the moment, it's no surprise it's going at the top. Oh god, no, why is Utonia's brother from Minnesota? Utonia's brother suddenly being a thing, however, is interesting to be showing up in 6 seasons of the show. But okay. An old taffy diet, however, sounds pretty awful on the gums and teeth for sure. However, mistaking the weird beast that comes out of the train car for their uncle is... I don't know how you can do that, but it's a time for sure. The monster they mistake him for going nuts over eating taffy is... Look, at this point, it's pretty boring and pretty lame, given everything we've seen up until this point. It's a pretty mid-episode, honestly, and the entire idea of it basically just boiling down to, they made an assumption again, so this is obviously very funny, isn't it? But in reality, it's not really all that funny, to be honest, and it's kind of one of the more lamer plots in this series, to be honest. And it's followed up by yet another pretty bad episode, honestly, and wreaking havoc. With Utonium cooking a chili that reeks and isn't that good either. Dude, just get a cookbook at this point. It's probably easier than whatever the hell you're doing. Okay, really? Chemical X chili? Are you fucking kidding me at this point? The chili having some interesting stomach after effects that turn into a noxious fart monster. Are you kidding me? Really? Them being the monster with nose plugs and setting him on fire is... Oh, wait, never mind. And a meta callback to season 1? Are you fucking kidding me? God, no, not Limburg. Also, the cheese puns suck at the end as well. This entire episode is just a complete write-off if you ask me. Bottom of the list. Wow, it's been 5 seasons since Dynamo was last seen, and it's finally back again? Oh, it's evil now. Okay, cool, interesting concept. Girls being down on Dynamo is kind of sad given that's their first big tool, but then speculating on who could have taken it is a nice bit every single time they do it. They had no chill with him in this bit, however. I kinda don't really see how he could have done that, to be honest. But the fact they do show how Dynamo is that indestructible, given how much was hyped up in the first episode, is insane, to be honest. The mayor being the most destructive person they know is on point, however, and the fact that he's just like, more or less just really out of his depth with Dynamo is expected. Yeah, this is pretty good. It's not as good as Make Zen, but it's up there. So wait, Townsville has an operational court system? What? You're only establishing this now. Mojo having to teach a class as a community service bit is funny and a unique take to have with a Mojo focused episode. Him teaching English as a second language for foreigners to teach them his way of speaking, it's cursed, and imagining a lot of people having to talk like that is rough. But the fact that they are spreading the word and making everyone in Townsville talk like them and Mojo, it's also cursed. But also, why did they allow him to have a billboard? That feels like the last thing you should be doing right now. And it looks like Bubbles' inner Mojo is still there as it's coming out in this episode. The talking dog being what to deprogram them all is funny as hell, alongside Mojo being put for another worse one himself. Honestly, this, while you could argue is probably a lot more basic concept than makes sense to me, I enjoyed this one a lot more than that one, so it's gonna be put up the top if you ask me. So Utonium's having his own episode again. Kinda love that he's having a few more this season. The girls literally calling out for the fact that they are actual accidents on Utonium is rough, however, but they're not wrong. They even call out Dynamo being on purpose as a very rough thing, and Utonium having a breakdown over all this is a time and very relatable, but also, you made a literal Iron Man suit, buddy. Don't be so down in the dumps. The aliens gave us a Velcro bit, maybe lose it a lot when it was mentioned, and the girls being normal looks so cursed. Get it away right now. Utonium working at a pizza shop in his little dream is uncanny, and it feels weird, but I get that's the point. And given how comically this episode is taken, I can't hate it, but I don't love it either. It's kind of meh, honestly. I'm gonna put it below Primates. How long has it been since we've had a new villain in this show? It feels like forever, honestly. Mascara is frightening for a villainess at this time. Her backstory is quite a good vibe as well. The differing puns on makeup, however, does get a little bit tiresome after a while. And Buttercup getting slivered with makeup that can't be taken off, and the girls trying to find ways to take it off is funny, especially using that fire hose, to be honest. Mascara spreading her makeup throughout town and even getting to him is a step from competition if you ask me. Utonium's entire first idea, however, sounds scary. The makeup instruments being used as weapons by Mascara is quite unique, and oh lordy, the professor's in drag again, and it's really making me question things about him. And this is why you don't brag about natural beauty at the end, Blossom. This episode, however, overall is a really good romp, and as one of the last feature-length episodes, I really enjoy it. It's gonna go right at the top. This episode, however, I really cannot stand. Seeing a more domesticated Utonium this season feels a bit more odd than usual, however, it is kinda nice seeing him like that at some points. So it's an entire episode where they interpret the professor's comments as being bad, and they interpret it as them being like rejected or getting kicked out or something like that. And oh boy, you can expect for where this is going from just the first 3 minutes. And 2 minutes later, yep, misunderstanding plot shenanigans. But you'd think after 6 seasons they'd think better of Utonium and everyone else in the matter, and was blowing up the lab really all that necessary? Well, there's so many ways I could just say that this is a really bad episode. It's going at the very bottom of the list. A mayor-focused plot? I smell a bad time, honestly. Utonium's face is essentially how I feel about the flanderization of the mayor at this point, and the amount of nut stuff Utonium just makes me wonder how he accidentally creates this stuff after oops. So Utonium just has a machine that allows them to enter the mayor's dreams now? Okay, buddy. And god, the trippy sequence that follows them getting into his head is wild, and it kind of made me sick a little bit. The animation upgrade is even more noticeable in this episode, however, and given that this is how he sees himself in his dreams and illusions of grandeur, it makes a lot of sense for the mayor, honestly, but god, his pickle addiction in this is kind of disturbing. The endless Miss Bellum sends me in a loop, honestly, and it's like, oh, what? The dream mayor being down the criminals just feels wrong, and god, the mayor just wanting to hug a monster pickle is fitting but also very annoying given how much of a cunt he is by the end of this episode. It's not bad, it's probably the best mayor-focused plot in a very long time, but it's gonna go above Say Uncle, and that's putting it very lightly. So this is the last Rowdy Ruffs episode. Kinda sad, it's kind of the end of an era for them, but the Rowdy Ruffs plot getting wrapped up with them being fought over by Mojo and him. It's quite an interesting plot, I won't lie. But how did Mojo not realize they were back when him returned with them about a season ago? And did him corrupt their memories to have them forget that Mojo initially made them? Him calling themselves the Rowdy Ruffs father feels off. I can't explain why, it just does. Him does have a good few points, however. He did make them a lot better in many different aspects, and if it weren't for one particular weakness still being around, they would still be pretty decent against the Powerpuffs. The one-upmanship between the two is a lot to handle, but I love how it escalates. And Mojo has a mech of his own and we haven't had a big mech fight in this show yet. What the hell?
That's the evilest thing I can imagine!
Aww, we love good supportive co-parenting. The fact that this is the last time the Rowdy Ruffs show up in the show is kinda sad, but it's nice I finally got their own little spoof at the outro as a nice little bookend. Gonna miss them in this series, but they had a good run. It's a Bubbles plot with more animals, and it's also the return of Bullet. Two factors that I feel like I kind of really feel like are gonna mesh pretty well, but let's see how this goes. But how did Bubbles not notice that she ate a bee? And oh god, she's been coned. The fact that the plot is caused by the mayor essentially just putting up a statue over a pothole and the squirrels causing havoc and Bubbles being unable to communicate with them with her allspeak, it's a nice little dual storyline, and they remember the Squirrel Society from Stray Bullet and Bullet herself in this, and I love this so much. And the fact that they stored the nuts in a pothole is an odd choice, but I guess I'll let it slide. The mayor being an absolute dumbass about this again is expected by now, and I hate I have to say that. But in all honesty, it's probably one of the best episodes. It's probably one of the better episodes this season. Not gonna say it's up there with the likes of Make Zen or A Made Up Story. It's probably gonna go somewhere in the middle, honestly. This episode, however, is definitely one to put into the green tier, and it's another Gang Green Gang episode, but it's also the return of another villain as we're going to get into in a little bit. Bubbles bring up the fact that Buttercup was infatuated by Ace at one point. It's pretty harsh, honestly. Talking about harsh, though, the girls don't see the Gang Green Gang as a threat. Just loitering in the outdated video games line just kinda hurts, honestly. Like, fuck you, Bubbles, retro games are cool. However, they're plotting alongside Sedusa coming back and having the Gangrene Gang as a villain team up after being away for 3 seasons. It's amazing getting to finally see her pop back up. Although, alternative episodes for this episode include the Gangrene Be Down Bad or the Gang Simps for Sedusa. Sedusa turning giant in this episode is definitely an upgrade as well as Snakes for Hair. Buttercup, super not over Ace, however. And the Gangrene boys being so broken up by getting betrayed is kinda sad, but it's sweet when they root for the girls to take Sedusa down. Nice of the Gangrenes to get some of the credit for helping taking her down as well. Pretty good episode, gonna put it just a little bit of above custody battle. Oh god, here we go with yet another bad one in my opinion, and the entire plot of the episode being caused by nobody recognizing a baby that was kidnapped by a monster. Certainly an interesting concept. The fact that nobody can recognize it is probably a sign that it's not actually anyone's kid, but even them going to Keen and her instantly going, nope, is real kinder teacher vibes, not gonna lie. Miss Bellum sassing the mayor like that in this episode, however, is total mood, and really, why are you still working for him at this point if you're just gonna sass him like that? Them trying to take care of the kid goes about as well as you'd expect, and the fact it was actually the monster in the beginning's baby the entire time, it just seems so obvious that it's annoying with this premise, and I'll be honest, this is, again, a very low scoring episode. Not gonna lie, it's going just above wreaking havoc. This, however, is arguably the best episode of the season in my opinion. With the narrator getting hijacked by Mojo, it's a very fun concept that I'm surprised I haven't done up until this point, but the fact that the narrator had this much power and he didn't realize it is certainly an interesting topic, because Mojo is able to actually manipulate the events of the entire episode to his whim, and it's so amazing. The Powerpuffs literally being forced to do all these awful things because the plot literally says for them to do so is quite a time, and the mayor 100% deserves the ass kicking though. Seriously, he's had so many chances to be better. The backfiring of the order to destroy each other and not being able to stop it is expected, but it's still fun nonetheless. And oh my god, they're self-aware about the fact they have a narrator. What is this? And the fact that they actually find him captured somewhere, and the whole fact of like, they actually find him there, and I really want to see what the narrator looks like, and I'm kind of bummed we don't. But aside from that though, this is arguably the best episode of the season, going up the top for sure. This one though, in my opinion, this is probably going to be one of the worst ones so far. And the fact that it all comes about because they're so nonchalant about battling the sun itself, I have no idea if it's cockiness or not, but coming back sunburned does not a fun time make. And literally the entire concept of the episode is just torture porn against the girls because, oh, I don't know, they just forgot to use sunscreen one time. This is kind of mean-spirited and, no, the peeling of the skin is just disgusting. Yeah, I don't need to say anything else. This is just a really bad episode. It feels just like an exercise in misery for the Powerpuffs in this episode. It's going right near the bottom, right next to Little Misinterprets. So a dude who's sad becomes a villain and wants to make Townsville depressed because they're all happy. Okay! This entire episode literally just being the entirety of Townsville is just crying the entire episode. Bubbles initially not being affected by it is also kind of funny, but the voice actors must have had a very hard time in the booth, and how hilarious is annoying. Annoying to the point that I haven't felt since Rainbow the Clown in season 1. I hate it. I hate all of this. His comeuppance being the fix of it is kind of funny, but it's still really not a good episode, and it's not for the premise, it's mainly just because of the entire performance of the voices being done. That really does it in. It's going above That's Not My Baby, and that's all I'm really going to say about this one. A western send-up of the series is alright, even Townsville being an actual town instead of just a city is pretty funny. Mojo being a robber and the sheriff being the mayor is wild, and This episode just has steampunk Powerpuff Girls, and I feel like this episode purely should exist purely because of that, because I love it. And a traditional duel between them is a lovely trope, and it's so good. However, aside from that, I don't really have that much to say, only because it's just a regular episode, except it's Western/steampunk themed. It's good, but again, I can't really say all that much in regards to it because it's literally just a derivative Powerpuff Girls Mojo episode that we've seen a dozen times by this point, except it's Western themed. The only thing I can really say that really stands out is that the Steamy Puff Girls are pretty cool, I guess, but aside from that, yeah, not really all that much I can really say. It's going right about the middle.
I grow tired of the repetitive outcome of my encounters with the Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah, so am I after 127 episodes! Mojo getting a kid in an ice cream store has to be up on the list of evil things this monkey has done. Honestly, Blossom is so sick of her sister's shit, it's kind of hilarious, and Mojo somehow managed to make a machine that fuses them all together. My guy, you could be doing so many better things with this concept. The way they still somehow managed to figure out how their body works is pretty neat, and Mojo having the aim of a stormtrooper in this episode, it's interesting, but even the narrator out here trying to give them a name like it's a DBZ fusion of all things. And like, aside from that, yeah, like I said in Western Pieces, it's literally just a derivative plot at this point. I'm sorry to have to say it, I can't really say all that much. We've seen these sorts of concepts by now. However, I will put it above Western Pieces, to be honest. A pirate-themed episode. Oh no, they stole the chemical X, whatever will end up happening. Oh, them becoming metahumans. How unexpected. Oh gosh, they literally just become the pirate ghost from SpongeBob, and the name of one of the pirates, Crack McCragen. Even when he's gone, Craig is still with us. The fight between the girls and the powered up pirates is pretty good, I won't lie, but Utonium getting to still be a smarty pants is still a nice thing I look forward to. But however, the pirates literally having time traveled away for a plot like this isn't really too far-fetched. Of course, the chest that they were looking for being in the mayor's office the entire time. Look, I don't even know at this point with the mayor. I don't get it. Oh my god, they finally get to take a vacation after 6 seasons of this. And of course it has to be lumped in with a Fuzzy Lumpkins plot. Jesus fucking Christ. The Lumpkins family being very annoying is expected, but my god, my autism is making this episode very hard to watch with their antics. Utonium slowly becoming more agitated, but not trying not to let it get to him is an absolute mood. I can't believe I've said this so many times while we've done these, however. The Bob Ross reference in this episode was really nice, but finally seeing Utonium lose it against Fuzzy is amazing. This is the beatdown I've wanted Utonium to give him ever since Impeach Fuzz. The kids actually getting along by the end, however, was pretty unexpected, but it's really nice in my opinion. This one's gonna go below Crazy Mixed Up Puffs, but above Western Pieces. What is this, the 4th or 5th Mojo plot this season? I get that he really didn't have a lot in the earlier seasons, and to be fair, there were a lot more variety, but it feels like they're really just pulling him out a lot more this season. It feels kind of weird. Anyway, Mojo being a little nerd at the beginning with his model of Townsville is kind of cute, to be honest, but him realizing he can just grow himself large is... Why has he never thought of this before? Growing the girls in size, however, to have them cause destruction with their size is a very good alternative, however. How is Townsville not used to these shenanigans by now? Them hating on the girls is getting pretty agitating at this point. I mean, it's once again a very good episode, but there's not much I can really say about it as Mojo episodes are getting very samey by this point. I guess I'll put it below City of Nutsville. A big radioactive squirrels open up. Huh. Oh wait, no, Spanish Squirrel is on fire. Oh, that is, interesting. And once again, Bubbles' also becoming in need is nice, as well as Blossom's ice breath. But the realization that Buttercup is the only one without a special talent is a pretty interesting move to make in the last season of all things. And Jesus, they really do have just like so many abilities, don't they? The continuity between all the seasons up until now feels like they've literally just decided, hey, we've shown off literally all of these things in these seasons, let's actually like properly show them off with an actual budget. However, the twisting tongue thing with Buttercup, kinda left field, but also kinda realistic as well, as believe it or not, I was one of those kids that actually was able to do it in primary school, and this episode kind of made me feel a little bit special as a result of it. Is this episode why I related to Buttercup so much, as well as loving Green a lot? And damn, narrator, can you chill, my guy? This one's gonna go above aspirations, if only for the fact that it's a bit of a wholesome one, and, well, to be honest, it's a Buttercup plot that doesn't feel like it's a bad one in my opinion. Huh, okay, a weird Mr. Rogers parody that looks like it got dipped in whatever the aesthetic for Floops Fooglies was in Spy Kids. I can already tell this one's gonna suck. Damn, the old scam people out of money using children's show shenanigans trick. Guess it's still a thing in 2005? Bubbles just stole all the money in Townsville. Okay, I get that she's been doing a lot more dumber stuff in these last few seasons, but this is way out of left field even for Bubbles. Her beating down the prison gang members of Willie's employment is really nice though, and the mayor's speech at the end is so uncanny. I never want to hear him say that kind of thing again. It literally feels like he's a parody by this point. It's gonna go below what's the big idea, and this has to be the weakest Bubbles plot as of yet. This episode is literally a parody of Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoons, as well as just a huge send-up of Jay Ward cartoons in general. I kinda like the idea that it's basically one huge tribute to him as the second last episode, because this really feels like an out-of-their plot even for the Powerpuff Girls. But the psychic being a criminal? Gosh, that is just a redundant thing. And how do you get locked out of your own town, Mayor? Seriously! The free weekend minutes bit feels so dated now because we are beyond that with unlimited calls and text. It feels a bit odd having to hear that in this day and age. And this is the most we've ever heard the narrator in a single episode, and I love it because it's literally just what the Jay Ward cartoons would have done back in the day. And there's a voodoo doll shop in Townsville. What? And they're literally being saved by an eBay scalper for the episode. What is this? Look, I don't know if the episode's plot is good, but the tribute to Jay Ward as an entire premise is such a lovely bit, and that commercial during the middle before the end bit, that's gotta be really good. I realize this is probably gonna be a bit controversial, but I'm gonna put it above Nothing Special, cause while it may be more than Nothing Special, it's pretty damn good if you ask me. This, of all things, is the final episode? Okay, seeing the girls in fancy outfits is kinda surreal after seeing them in so many outfits throughout the series. And oh my god, they murdered Octi! Murder party, murder party, murder party! The fact this literally just turns into just Knives Out or a whodunit mystery with Bubbles pretty much just acting like, I don't know, the Daniel Craig character in Knives Out, I can't remember his name at the top of my head, but Mojo trying to use it as an excuse to get some chemical X is pretty expected by this point, but I'm glad he tried one more plot near the end, and Utonian basically trying to be a good dad and fixing Octi is one last nice good dad gesture, we love to see it. Even if he was the one that lied and didn't tell Bubbles about the fact that he ripped up Octi by accident. How did anyone let Mojo into the house and not notice him? The ending with Mojo getting food poisoning, however, is kinda mid, I guess. I think I should deduct points because of the fact that it was kind of a dumb toilet humor joke. But aside from that though, this is actually a pretty decent episode. It's gonna go above the last one, and yeah, season 6 kind of ends off on an interesting note. You're all probably expecting me to say that season 6 was the weakest one of the entire show by this point, because that's the trend that's been happening ever since season 3. But to be honest, Season 6 was actually a lot better than Season 5. Yeah, again, there were a lot more duds this season, there were a lot more ones that I felt were a little bit iffy, and I was kind of running out of steam about what to really say about a lot of plots by this point, but when you're 6 seasons deep in a show like this, and we're this many episodes in, holy fuck, it's kind of hard to really say in regards to what is weak and what isn't based upon absolute content, because, well, I mean, I literally mentioned it, the Mojo plots got pretty samey and the overexposure on him this season was kind of felt a lot. That being said, however, I do have to admit, this season wasn't as bad as Season 5 or even Season 3 in my opinion. Then again, I kind of expected it to be a little bit weaker, but I'm glad that it wasn't the absolute bottom of the barrel. There are some really bad ones this season, however, but thankfully, it's not the end of the run just yet, because we've got one more special to go. Lim, however, trusting the mayor to do anything competent by this point is just playing themselves by this point. In fact, his end goal was just to create. Now that we have reached that point, it's time to finally rank it. Everything that we've covered up until this point, the 6 seasons, the 2 specials, and the movie. Oh boy, this is gonna take a while, folks. Grab a drink real quick, because we're ranking it all right now. 138, Toast to the Town. 137, Imaginary Fiend. 136, Getting Twiggy with It. 135, Pace Makes Waste. 134, Little Misinterprets. Number 133, Shotgun Wedding. Number 132, Sunscreen. 131, Insecticide. 130, Not So Awesome Blossom. 129, Wreaking Havoc. 128, Fuzzy Logic. Number 127, Coup de Grace. Number 126, That's Not My Baby. 125, Down and Dirty. 124, Bubble Vision. 123, Abracadabra. 122, Collector. 121, City of Frownsville. 120, Fallen Archies. 119, Knock It Off. 118, Monkey See Doggy 2. Number 117, Cop Out. Number 116, Keen on Keen. 115, Say Uncle. 114, Save Mojo. 113, Seek No Evil. 122, Jewel of the Isle. Number 111, Gesundheit. Number 110, Pet Feud. 109, Sweet and Sour. 108, Nightmare. 107, Mojo Jonesin. 106, Major Competition. 105, Catastrophe. 104, Lying Around the House. 103, Oops I Did It Again. 102, Ice Sore. 101, Slave Today. 100, Impeach Fuzz. 99, Crime Mates. 98, Supervillain. 97, Neighborhood. 96, Town and Out. 95, Catmandu. 94, Members Only. 93, Divide and Conquer. 92, What's the Big Idea? 91, PPGs. 90, Super Zeros. 89, Shut the Pop Up. 88, Bought and Scold. 87, Monkey See Doggy Do. 86, You Snooze You Lose. 85, Boy Toys. 84, West in Pieces. 83, Slumbering with the Enemy. 82, City of Nutsville. 81, Nano in the North. 80, Free Girls and a Monster. 79, Roughing It Up. 78, Hot Air Buffoon. 77, Stray Bullet. 76, Just Desserts. 75, Telephony. 74, Crazy Mixed Up Puffs. 73, Film Flam. 72, Curses. 71, Coup d'etat. 70, Moral Decay. 69, Too Poop to Puff. 68, Bubble Vicious. 67, Silent Treatment. 66, Power Lunch. 65, Bang for Your Buck. 64, The Main Event. 63, Burglar Alarm. 62, Something's Amiss. 61, 'Twas the Fight. 60, Octi Evil. 59, Bobby Theorist. 58, Schoolhouse Rocked. 57, City Eclipseville. 56, Mizzen in Action. 55, Dream Scheme. 54, Mime for a Change. 53, Girls Gone Mild. 52, Los Dos Mojos. 51, Bubble Boy. 50, A Very Special Blossom. Oh my god. Oh my god, okay. Nearly there. 49, The Powerpuff Girls movie. 48, Candy is Dandy. 47, Live and Let Dynamo. 46, Monstrosity. 45, All Choked Up. 44, Tough Love. 43, Birthday Bash. 42, Makes Zen to Me. 41, Powerpuff Bluff. 40, Cover Up. 39, Substitute Creature. 38, Aspirations. 37, Paranoia. 36, Nothing Special. 35, I See a Funny Cartoon in Your Future. 34, Ploys Are Us. 33, Daylight Savings. 32, Boogie Frights. 31, Get Back Jojo. 30, Helter Shelter. 29, Stuck Up Up and Away. 28, Just Another Manic Mojo. 27, Octagon. 26, Mojob. 25, Uh-Oh Dynamo. 24, Custody Battle. 23, Butter Crush. 22, Speed Demon. 21, The Headsuckers Box Seat. 20, Him Diddle Riddle. 19, Mo Linguished. 18, The Boys Are Back in Town. 17, Forced Kid. 16, Powerpuff. 15, Best Rainy Day Adventure Ever. 14, A Documentary. 13, A Made-Up Story. 12, Meet the Beat Alls. 11, The Powerpuff Girls Rule. 10, Simeon Says. 9, Crisscross Crisis. 8, Child Fearing. 7, The Bare Facts. 6, Twisted Sister. 5, Equal Fights. 4, Mr. Mojo's Rising. 3, Beat Your Greeds. 2, The Rowdy Rough Boys. And number 1, See Me, Feel Me, Know Me. Ah! Okay, cool. We just spent nearly 3 hours, mind you, talking about the Powerpuff Girls and ranking all of it. So, I hope you all appreciate this. I think that's going to be the big thing I'm going to be focusing on with this. Please appreciate the fact I put all this hard work into it. I really worked hard. But also, this is probably a lot more of a expanded viewpoint about how I view the Powerpuff Girls, because I literally talked about it episode by episode. However, my love of the Powerpuff Girls, even if I did slag off about it a lot in this video, it doesn't take away from the fact this is probably one of my favorite cartoons of all time. And if you want to look into it a bit more as to why I love this series, then check out another video I literally made just before this one came out. It's a small little mini video essay as part of a mini video essay series I do called In Transition, where I literally talk about stuff like this, and I went at length about how much Powerpuff Girls basically helped me come out as trans and basically helped me realize, hey, gender norms kind of suck like that sometimes. However, if you're just in it for the ranking videos, I totally understand. There's also another ranking video I did just before this one on every episode of Teen Titans. It kind of blew up a little bit a while ago, so if you want to go check out that one as well, go right ahead. It'll be on the screen alongside either one. However, if you like the stuff that I'm bringing out regardless, if you like this video, and if you browse around and find anything else that you like from me, please don't be afraid to like this video, subscribe, do everything that you need to in order to make sure the algorithm knows, hey, you like my content. And until next time, catch y'all later. I'm gonna go collapse and rest my voice.